fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, yes, welcome to the home of Common Sense. It's Ian Collins in for... Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it would have been, once upon a time, Peter Cardwell. So it's now technically Alex Phillips. But she's back next week, so stand by for all of that. We're now on, what are we, day 9 of the Iran war. Yet again, Donald Trump has been busy handing Keir Starmer his own backside on an oven-ready dish. The US president now taking every chance he can to highlight to the world the complete disappointment, he says, and, fair to say, anger at the UK's lacklustre approach to helping the Americans. Yeah, well, helping the Americans remove a jihadist terror threat. Keir, we are told, said, you know, we are planning to do all we can to assist our cousins overseas. And it was that sort of fairly loose language, initially, of course, a complete no-no, where it all came to pass. There's Mr. Trump saying, look, we want to get rid of a medieval death cult. Fancy giving us a hand? And that came the call from the White House. No, I'm busy washing my hair that day, said number 10. So we're in this kind of weird standoff. Starmer wasn't alone in this position, to be fair. But what made the wheels come off was the fact that the UK has always been there with America, just instinctively standing side by side. And today, Tony Blair, love him or hate him, a decisive leader, waded in saying we should have backed America from the very beginning. And then last night, Donald Trump said the UK does not need to send its aircraft carriers because we don't need them. He said Keir Starmer is seeking to join a war that we've already won as the US and Israel continue to launch strikes on Iran. In that social media post, Trump said the UK was giving serious thought to sending, despite the UK giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East before saying the US does not need them. Downing Street did not respond to this, and it goes on. This is big. But is Trump right? Is he utterly deluded on this one? And is the UK-US relationship damaged for good? We've got big problems in this area. I'm going to come back, by the way, in a moment to the Birmingham protests on Friday. Kind of a bit ongoing, some of this stuff. Students, got all manner of people losing their mind because a medieval death cult has been removed from planet Earth. We'll come back to that. Thankfully, we've got a couple of great guests joining us in the studio. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman is back with us, political commentator. Leo Watson is with us as well, political strategist. Morning to you guys.
Morning.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, Leo, firstly, I think fair to say you probably back more from the left than the right. I mean, what has happened to your Labour Party?
God. Well, I don't think following the footsteps of the late, great Harold Wilson is the worst thing in the world, to be quite honest with you, and telling the Americans where to shove it when the Americans are wrong. I don't see a problem with that.
Are the Americans wrong on this? I mean, they're completely wrong on this.
I think going and killing leaders and setting that sort of precedent is horrendously dangerous. What happens when they come for our leaders, which they will now, and will with quite a lot of legitimacy as well?
Matthew?
I'm sorry, but comparing... You're saying when they kill leaders. Remember, the Ayatollah in Iran was the one who decided to bring this despotic regime for the last however many decades, persecuting and murdering Iranian civilians for daring to protest and speaking their voice. Earlier this year in January, we saw the rise up of shopkeepers and students. 30,000 people killed is the estimates by the UN. I'm really sorry, but I do not mourn his death. I don't think anyone should mourn his death. This is an opportunity for democracy to sow its seeds in Iran, and my God, I hope we get
sowed the seeds in Iraq, yeah.
Well, again, another decision by a Labour government, wasn't that? So,
but is it an equivalence, though? I mean, because, you could argue that this is actually Israel's war, backed by America.
Correct.
Israel will claim they've been under fire for goodness knows how long. It's defensive more than offensive in that respect. You've got to get rid of this system. It's the greatest sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth. It's killing its own people, and that's just this latest set of headlines. Over the years, over the last 40 years, Lord knows how many Iranians have gone. And yet, the position from many on the left, perhaps yourself, Leo, is it's not America's job to get involved.
No, I think the position for many people on the left is it's not Britain's job to get involved. If America wants to go to war and sponsor an Israeli war in Iran, a very dangerous enemy, I absolutely back that. We don't have to be involved. We can take the defensive position that we have. I think it's actually mature politics, and I just don't think because we don't go and attack them, we don't bomb them, we're not boots on the ground, we're not leading from the way, that doesn't make us in any way cowardly. That makes us quite sensible. We've got a nuanced position that's keeping the people of this country safe.
But Leo, your most successful leader of all time, Tony Blair. I can see a tear in your eye as I mention the name. Tony Blair has said, when America need help, you better show up.
Yeah. Well, Tony, if Tony is one thing, it's very consistent. Like, Tony had his faults, and his biggest flaw was the Iraq and Afghanistan war. So I back Keir on this. I don't back Keir on many things. I'm not a big Keir Starmer fan, but I back Keir on what he's done throughout this entire war and what he continues to do in the foreign policy space.
But where it went wrong, Matthew, it seems, for Keir Starmer, and it's possible, it's quite possible that actually Starmer's first position was to help the Americans. And then, of course, Ed Miliband absolutely
nutty
lost.
net zero.
Yes. Do you know that phrase, Ed Miliband? I had never heard anyone say that until Friday when a caller mentioned it. And I thought,
you should go to some Labour Party meetings.
I like that. That's really good.
Why is everyone says millipede and things like that? Why has nobody ever said that before? It's so obvious.
Oh, millipede.
So Ed Miliband apparently lost his mind at a cabinet meeting. He was climbing the walls. Apparently he went down the stairs like the exorcist crab on his back, where he was discombobulating by the second.
It's just
you're going to help the Americans? I want a wind farm. He was
the weight of all those solar panels.
Absolutely lost the plot. And apparently Rachel Reeves backed this position up. Yvette Cooper backed this position up. And then Starmer's kind of thinking, God, if this goes any further, I'm going to have a leadership contest on my hands. So he rode back. So is it possible Keir was going to help the Americans?
Look, we'll never know, frankly. At the end of the day, this is another delayed dither and U-turn by the Labour government. It was supposed supposed to be, we're going to back America. And then it was, oh, actually, you can't use our bases for however many hours it was. We don't know whether those hours could have been crucial, could have brought this about earlier. And now we're seeing that we are going to send help, but in 2 weeks' time, once the destroyers got ready and got over to Cyprus, we might send aircraft carriers. Well, sorry, we should have got them started in position last week. We knew that this was coming. We knew something was coming because Trump put out all over social media that the Great Armada is heading to the Middle East, ready to support the Iranian people. We knew something was going to happen. I do not believe for 1 second that no one said, do you think we should maybe start moving some equipment? Do you think maybe we should start preparing? Instead, we've waited till the horses bolted and now going, all right, let's ready a destroyer, maybe ready some aircraft carriers. I mean, by the time they get over there, this could be over. It's a complete, absolute shambles.
But on that first point, Leo, when the help was requested from the White House, it seemed to be just quite a simple thing. Oh, you know those air bases, the ones we've used forever, through a general sort of tacit agreement. OK to use those? And Starmer went, no, it's not. I mean, that was the point, wasn't it? It wasn't. Nobody was asking the RAF to start bombing Tehran. No one was suggesting that the British Army start hiding in the mountains of Iran, ready to pounce in their boots. It was merely, can we use, you know, Diego Garcia? Can we use the various bases because it will make things, you know, fairly swift and operational for us?
I want a Prime Minister whose first instinct is to keep the people of Britain safe. We don't know what a war with Iran looks like when we are one of the chief instigators of that war.
How funny that sounds to someone like me?
So do tell me why it's funny. It might keep people.
Well, we'll come to that
safe
when we get to some protests and maybe channel migration. I don't know, but it's.
I look forward to it.
But that's all he asked for, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just the use of air bases.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It is purely a use of the airbase. I mean, again, it's ironic that we're talking about Diego Garcia, the airbase that Britain's about to give away to Mauritius and then lease back from itself.
Do you think he just said, I'm not sure if we own it anymore? Maybe that's what
I don't know. The point is that we need strong leadership. We are supposed to be the closest ally of America, this special relationship, and of all the presidents, of all the presidents to annoy about the special relationship, you've done it with Donald Trump.
I'm sorry, we talk about strong leadership. He stood down to the strongest person in the world, one of the biggest maniacs in the world, and said, actually, no, I don't think this is in the best interest of Britain. We will give you limited support that is right for our country. That is strong. I mean, he's the first Prime Minister, time immemorial, to actually say to a US President. Since the last Labour Prime Minister, he said to a US President, no, thank you. That is leadership. I'm sorry, that is leadership.
The best interest of Britain is getting rid of this despotic regime in Iran that funds terrorism around the world.
Oh, because terrorism is going to go down now. It's going to stop. That's good. Yeah. Now we've bombed Iran.
Did you not get that earlier?
It's done. It's finished. Get in. We've won.
The point is that Iran sponsors terrorism around the world. Is the reason for the conflict in all
Let the US
Middle
deal with it then, and we have done.
But guys,
here's the thing. Look, is the US-UK relationship damaged for good? This was not. I mean, let's be honest, Leo. When Starmer said what he said, it wasn't a Hugh Grant moment in that film, was it? You know, it wasn't that.
I disagree.
This relationship is no longer
Mr. President.
in our
favour. Up your fundamentals and having nothing to do with it. There was none of that going on.
I disagree.
I might be able to help you. I'm not sure. I better ask Ed Siliband because he can help.
Do you think he got
Ed, what do you think?
Do you think he got advice from international lawyers or something? You know, get some legal advice first.
Maybe he is a lawyer. Maybe he's actually one of the most knowledgeable people in this country.
But isn't that rather the problem, Leo? Is that if you are a kind of, certainly a human rights lawyer, and by the way, nothing wrong with being a human rights lawyer, but as Keir says it in his own biography, it underpins everything he stands for. So you can't, it almost becomes in your DNA that everything is...
Thing, though, right?
Is that a good thing?
Human rights in your DNA? I think that's a good thing, right? That's aren't we fighting it around?
No, the left don't have the monopoly on human rights, do they? I mean, they think... But the idea that
you can't say that in one breath and then take it with the other.
But you can because the elasticity of international law is there for all to see. It isn't written down like, oh, the law of theft is illegal, the law of breaking into a house is illegal. International law is a very different animal.
But we're attacking Iran because they hate human rights, because they don't believe in it. And then we've got a guy who actually knows and understands human rights on an international level, but we hate him because he's not destroying the human rights.
If you're human rights kind of, I suppose, issue, you could look at it as a spectrum as to where you stand on
just
it.
pick and choose which one you like, yeah.
Well, yes, in a way. You could tell... Because when you
That's not how human rights works.
Well, of course it is, because context is everything, isn't it? So human rights,
Correct.
OK. Would I be right in going into that war because I'm going to save the lives of many more people, even if I have to kill the Ayatollah and some terrorists? So some would still argue on the left that is a breach of a breach of law.
Well,
that's a breach of human rights laws.
I think we are, and the US and Israel are breaking the conventions of war by targeting leaders.
Does the human rights of the Ayatollah matter more?
No, it's not about human rights. It's about by targeting leaders. It's a very dangerous precedent. Do you want our Prime Minister to be killed?
Should we do?
Do you want our Prime Minister to be a tactic?
To despotic terrorist leaders in the world that everyone for decades have been begging for someone to do something about, and the opportunity arises, we actually can. Should we pass a UN charter? Should we pass a motion in our councils? What should we do?
Yeah, come on,
should
Leo
take
Watson,
them out.
answer
I'm glad
this.
you asked. We should support countries who want to go on the front foot and invade them and attack them, which we did.
Sorry, OK, right, so you are saying that actually what we should have done is Britain and America should have invaded Iran.
No,
that's what you're now saying.
No, I'm saying that what we have
So 1
now
minute
is
ago
what we
it's
should
the
have done.
human rights, now we're saying we should invade Iran. What, make it a 51st state? What's your argument here? Come on,
I think
get
the
to
argument
the point.
is quite clear. What we are doing is the right thing.
No, just hold.
We are doing the right thing.
So,
we don't have to be the country at the forefront of every attack on another nation. We are supporting the Americans and the Israelis to invade, which they will also invade.
That wasn't the original position, was it?
Starmer's original
live U-turns.
Starmer's original position was you can't use our bases.
No, Starmer's position was you can. He got pushed down to defensive action.
We're assuming it was you
I think we know he was pushed down by the cabinet.
We don't know.
And I think you've got to go with collective responsibility. We do know.
If you're the Prime Minister,
Let's not
collective responsibility is something usually the rest of the cabinet follow from the Prime Minister, not the other way around.
Loads of different Prime Ministers run their cabinet in a different way. You're talking about a presidential cabinet system, and he's not running a presidential cabinet system.
But he is the Prime Minister.
He's not running Clement Attlee very successfully didn't run a presidential
why didn't he just say,
system.
Ed, you're an idiot, get out, you're fired, so you can get rid of him. I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep if Ed Miliband didn't exist anymore on the political spectrum.
Well, I think the soft left of the Labour Party might have something to say about that, and he's thinking about that.
You could be right about that. Listen, guys, stay with us. There's a lot to get into. That was the rehearsal, by the way. We go on air in about 10 minutes. So, listen, Matthew and Leo, stay with us. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. In response to all of that, everything you just heard there, and that UK-US relationship, is it damaged for good? A bit more on Tony Blair as well. Ian Huntley, him, is dead. Tears all round, of course. And we'll look at that protest in Birmingham on Friday evening. Where does that leave the right to protest, and your thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We have big problems internationally and domestically. And it's worth just a look at what happened in Birmingham on Friday, because we almost have universities closing down for a day of mourning for the now deceased Ayatollah. We've got public protests that passed almost without any kind of comment. On Friday, protesters in support of the Iranian regime and its late supreme leader torched an Israeli flag, chanted death to the IDF at a vigil in Birmingham. Let's have a listen to what went on. And there was a lot of that. Dozens of activists assembled in the city to condemn the US-Israel strikes on the country and mourn the passing of the Ayatollah. Video footage showed the crowd chanting death to the IDF, bombed Tel Aviv, as well as burning the Israeli flag and holding pictures of the former Ayatollah, as well as the various chants of things like you can kill a man but you can't kill an ideology. I mean, on that point they might be right. It was attended by convicted terrorist Shahid Butt. I have no idea how this man is out there. He's somebody who's planning to stand at the local elections in May. Welcome to the UK in 2026. On Wednesday, by the way, a similar vigil took place in Manchester. About 800 people turned up for that. Later in this hour, we're going to be speaking to the Foreign Office Minister who's responsible for the Middle East. So we look forward to putting some of that to him. Meantime, we've got Matthew and Leo in the studio on this. I don't understand, Leo, how... Look, you know... It's a bit like when we were talking about the human rights thing. You know, you've got to be in, you've got to be out. Right to protest. We understand the right to protest, even if it's uncomfortable. You know, when I see those people gluing their testicles to the M25 because they don't like oil.
I did that one time. You never let me forget.
I know. And the photo imagery of the removal was really quite something. You want to hear a man scream? That's what they say. But all of that go. Look, so ordinarily you can't pick and choose. These people are dangerous. The students that are protesting are This is the United Kingdom. Why have we got people mooching around with this position, saying this kind of stuff, burning and setting fire to flags, and it gets a free pass?
I think there has to be protest. There will be protest. There will always be protest. We don't live in a homogenous society. I do have, obviously, I find anyone who's burning flags, shouting for someone else or some other institution to die, abhorrent. It is abhorrent. But there will be many people joining that protest who are just appalled by the war and the actions of the United States and Israel and Britain. And, you know, we can't in the one hand say, you know, thank God we killed that Iranian despot, but don't you dare protest when we do. So, you know, I think the majority will probably have been respectful protesters. The minority are abhorrent, and I'd like to see them put in prison and the full weight of the law used against them.
There you go. Leo says, kill the protesters. He didn't say that.
No, I'm going to come to Leo's defence. I'm going to give you a round of applause, because that was actually really good. Saying that they should be punished to the full extent of the law for hate crimes and things like that, bang on, I completely agree. I'm sorry, but the irony, these are supposed to be university students. You're supposed to be learning and challenging and understanding and debating and listening to different sides and having debates instead of an argument. But instead, they're there supporting a tyrannical regime. They're mourning the loss of effectively a state-sponsored terrorist. I'm sorry, but maybe get off your virtue signalling, Amazon UK, Kafka, scarf things, whatever, and actually go read some of the books. Go look at the poor innocent protesters' families who've been murdered in Iran for simply having the right to protest. If they went and protested in Iran against the regime, they would be dead by now. That's the irony. They have the freedom of speech here in this country to protest, and they are protesting about a regime that would remove their right to protest. It is utterly ridiculous.
Are we not deeply concerned? Like, what are we doing wrong as a nation that we can't convince reasonable people, reasonable university students who are educated, who are broadening their horizons? We can't convince these people that protesting in favour of the Ayatollah in Iran is a bad thing. Like, what are we doing wrong as a society? And that does deeply
trouble. There's no such thing as society.
Perhaps we're not doing anything wrong. Some people cannot be shown the light. Some people cannot be convinced the rights of their wrongs. I'm sorry, but you can lead a horse to water, right? Some people are just always going to find the other side, always take the other point in the debate and never listen to anyone else.
Can I just say, by the way, those neck scarf things, you can buy a better quality one at John Lewis.
Oh,
I should
right,
just add that in. Yeah, I just think for balance.
Other stores are available.
But this whole idea, and this to me, Leo, sort of goes to the centre of the slightly broken whirlwind. I don't put this totally at the foot of Keir Starmer. You can go back years on this one under Conservatives as well. There's something about this sort of experiment of multiculturalism where this bit doesn't fit into that. It cannot fit into that. You cannot have people representing the Islamic Iranian state chanting in the streets the most outrageous things, whose ideology, you know, one of them is a flipping former terrorist who did 5 years in jail. I mean, that's a point when you go, sorry, that's not multiculturalism, that's not freedom of speech. We don't want you. But I tell you what, boys, we've got 17 cops here. They've all got a machine gun each, and you've got 5 seconds to get the hell out of here. 5, 4, 3. They'd run. They'd be gone.
Yeah. And that's what they do in Iran.
Well, we don't
Which is
what
they're protesting.
But we don't have a prime minister that stands up and says, you know, I want to see Keir Starmer on the steps of Downing Street. So I saw those images in Birmingham. This ain't my country. This isn't flipping Tehran. Get the hell out of here. Everyone that was there chanting, all those students, your funding's gone at those universities, gone. I don't care whether it was 3 of you. That university should have done something about it. It's all gone.
Now, I think, I find it bewildering why people who go to prison on terrorism charges and are still in this country. I find that absolutely bewildering.
Agreed. But can stand for election as well.
Indeed. But what I will say is, to the point you made earlier, is like, oh, you know, anyone who these people don't fit in our society. Well, women who asked for the vote in the 1920s didn't fit into our society. Miners and dock workers who asked for workers' rights in the early 1900s didn't belong in our society. There was no place for those people. So the world moves on. We need protest. Protest moves things forward. So we need
these people in our society.
You need people who are willing to protest decisions. Absolutely.
So we need the pro-Iranian terrorist people.
The extremists need to go to prison and get out of this country.
Your idea of diversity.
Why? No, not my idea of diversity. You would have been on the side saying no workers' right in the 1900s. You would have been on the side saying no women's votes. You absolutely.
Why would you have been on that side?
Both of you would have been on that side. It's clear. Because they're protesting against the status quo.
Men didn't have votes either, by the way. Most blokes didn't back in the day either.
And you would have hated them. You would have hated the franchise being
There's a very simple solution to this. Go and protest in Iran. If you want to protest about Palestine and how dreadful everything's, go protest there.
We're bombing Iran. They won't let them in anymore.
Oh, right, because we're getting rid of this terrible despotic regime that they're actually in favour of. I'm sorry, but it's ridiculous.
Can you guys not see the irony?
No.
Can you not see the irony?
What, the irony of them protesting
Get rid of the despot,
UK,
but don't protest.
The irony of them protesting here in the UK, having freedom of speech, protesting that they would not be able to do in the country that they're wanting to do. I'm sorry, but that's the irony.
Listen, we're going to take a short pause. I know you guys are going to be back with us in around about 10 or 15 minutes' time. We have Foreign Office Minister Hamish Falconer coming on with us in a moment as well. We'll put a lot of this to him. Stand by for that. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. You can voice note us there as well. And, of course, if you're messaging, it's 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. It's 10:30. We're joined by Hamish Falconer, MP. He is, of course, Foreign Office Minister. Morning to you, sir.
Morning, Ian.
Nice to see you. Middle East is your brief, of course. This is your area. So back in July 2024, when you were given that post, did you think at that point, well, it might be a little quiet over there for a couple of years, and then this? So you couldn't have had a busier couple of weeks if you tried.
I've got to say, it wasn't that quiet in July 2024.
I was going to say, yes. I mean, we're talking about the Middle East, of course. So.
It's obviously a pleasure to serve, but it was a surprise to end up in ministry.
What is... I mean, let's just start off with this. I'm sure you hate the T word being mentioned, as in Trump, but, I mean, what has gone on here? We've now got Trump saying, you know, we don't even want your help. You know, you joined a war that's already been won. Now, we can argue the intellectual case on his point there. I don't think it has been won, but the wider point that he was making, of course, is that, you know, where were the UK on this? Tony Blair was always there. All the others were always there. Harold Wilson, maybe not, but what's happened? Where has it all gone wrong?
So I think we've just got to be clear, Ian. There were two decisions that faced the Prime Minister over the course of last weekend. One was, will the UK get involved in the initial strikes against Iran alongside the United States and Israel? And the Prime Minister rightly decided that we would not support those strikes. The second decision was, right, in the face of Iran attacking the whole region completely recklessly and with hundreds of thousands of British nationals in that area, should we take the specific and limited steps required in order to ensure that those Iranian ballistic missile launchers were destroyed as quickly as possible? And again, the Prime Minister, that's a separate decision. That's about making sure that those missiles can't fly against our friends, our partners, our people. And he took the right decision to say, yes, we will. But
what, on the first day, it seems, and this is as far as I can tell, and I'm sure you can let me in on the finer detail here, a phone call went in from the White House. Prime Minister, can you help us? Diego Garcia, we need some, you know, and others. We need air bases. We just need that level of assistance. We're not asking you to fly RAF jets over Tehran and start bombing or put soldiers in the hills or anything like that. We just need the use, as we've always had that agreement. Is that okay? Starmer, it appears, might have said yes, but when put to cabinet, Ed Miliband lost his mind, started crawling up the walls saying, no, this cannot happen. There's going to be a rebellion or something of that nature. And Keir Starmer changed his mind. Do you recognise that description of what happened?
So I think, Ian, you're referring to commentary around what happened in the National Security Council meeting. I was in that meeting, and there was absolutely no way that I would comment on the substance of those meetings. That's the most important.
You can tell us.
While I have every confidence in the talkTV viewership,
of course,
I'm sure that your viewers will understand that for the most sensitive, secret discussions of national security at the very highest level, it's not right for ministers to broadcast.
No, I agree, and I wouldn't expect you to sort of whip out the agenda right now. That would be curious. But there is always a sort of a public summary, if you like, of what the next steps would be. And it appears that there was an argument and there was a discussion, and I know that a lot of this stuff is said off the record. And Keir Starmer may well have initially been ready to assist America and now isn't. Because that's the point. From listening to Donald Trump last night and his Truth Social post, and I know he says a lot of stuff on there, and it is Donald Trump, he's got his own way of speaking, etc. But it appears that that's the bit that he can't get over. He's saying, look, you can send your aircraft carriers now, you can send your jets or whatever. You're too late, mate. That's what he's saying, isn't it? We've lost the trust of America. Our relationship is blown.
Well, I think so. I've obviously been in the crisis centre every day since this crisis started, and there's obviously two quite distinct things happening. One is what is happening in Iran, that initial US-Israeli decision and everything that's flowed from it, and then there's a separate thing, which is what's happening in the region. And what's happening in the region is you are seeing Israeli drones, Iranian drones, Iranian missiles flying all over the place. People are genuine. I've got to tell your viewers how shocked people are by what Iran is doing, because they aren't just targeting Israel. They're not even just targeting Israel and bits of the Gulf. They're targeting Azerbaijan.
Dubai.
They've been
Cyprus.
missiles what Iran is doing is truly, truly reckless. So we could, as you say, we could have a debate about those initial strikes, but there's something else has happened subsequent to those initial strikes, something really reckless that threatens not just our people, but some of our closest, longest partners and a whole set of British nationals in those countries. And that's why we took the decisions that we did in relation to those developments.
Why do you think the most successful leader that the Labour Party has ever had, Tony Blair, has now waded into this, it seems? When America needs you, you better show up, he said. Now, this, I understand, was from the classic secretly recorded moment in a meeting. His people have said this was never meant to be a public decision, a public statement in any form, but it's out there now. And that was always Blair's position. A documentary that was on recently, you may or may not have seen it, that looked at that time, didn't really learn that many new facts, but there were one or two little morsels in there. He said it there as well, you know, where do we want to be, with America or not with America? It was unthinkable to Blair that this would not be unequivocal every step of the way.
Well, look, I think there are clearly a whole range of views in British politics. There's some people who think we should always be with America under every possible circumstance. And there's some people who think we should never be with America under any circumstance. I think the Prime Minister was right. With those two decisions that I describe, I think he was right that he took them not on the basis of the views of our allies, however important they are, but a view on what's in Britain's national interests. And I think that's the right approach to decisions of this significance.
I would say in defence of Keir Starmer, I mean, the UK isn't the only country that has question marks. I mean, on that first, I think it was a Saturday when the United Nations gathered, I think it was the French that were first out of the traps with a very prolonged vocal attack on what was happening here. They seem to have somehow, I don't know how Macron sort of swerved all the mood music on that time. It all seems to be going Starmer's way, and Macron's got a free pass on this. The Spanish made their position very clear. I don't know whether you've spoken to your Spanish counterparts as to why they've chosen that position. Is there any news on what our other EU allies are thinking at the moment and where they are on this?
I mean, I'd say, Ian, that there's always probably a lot more interest and emotion associated to the US-UK relationship. We have just a much, much closer relationship than any other European power with America. We have a truly integrated security and defence system. And we've, at this moment, got American planes flying from British bases. The defensive operations that we're flying in the region, we do so in close coordination with our American allies. We obviously, in a way that almost no other countries in the world have been shoulder to shoulder in such a range of conflicts. Of course, we don't always agree. You mentioned a few times where we have and a few times where we haven't. But I appreciate that there is emotion associated with any time when the US and UK don't take the same decision. I've worked myself. I was a diplomat for a long time. I served in places like Afghanistan. I did so alongside many excellent American counterparts, and there's a real depth of personal contact between our two countries.
Where do you think, Minister, this is going in the next? I mean, Trump, it was always said Trump is very much a get in, get out kind of man. He would cite Venezuela as an example of that, and it's not an equivalence, but I think you take the point. This looks like it's going to go longer than perhaps even America intended. We spoke with, excuse me, John Bolton on Friday, of course, Trump's former national security advisor until they had an almighty row. He seemed to think this is long-haul territory. Do you share that?
Well, there is a real risk that we could see this conflict taking on a wider and wider significance. I know your viewers will be very conscious of the restrictions around the Straits of Hormuz, which is an absolutely vital maritime passageway. I'm sure people will have seen the developments in Lebanon, which are concerning as well. There is a risk in any conflict, and particularly in this one, that it grows and grows, and that's not what the UK wants to see. We want to see regional stability. We really do care about this part of the world, about the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean. We'll do everything we can to bring back regional stability.
But despite what Mr. Trump said, and he does say some curious things on his own social media platform, etc., do you envisage a ramping up of our inclusion? And could that get to the point where we send more of the RAF to that region, where we are looking at the army, we are looking ultimately at boots on the ground? I mean, contingency plans are always in place for possibilities. I'm not expecting you to comment on the specifics, but can you imagine this escalating to a point where those conversations become very real?
Look, we've set out what we will do. We've set it out very clearly in relation to those two decisions. I can't imagine moving in the direction that you describe. But of course, conflicts are very uncertain things, and we are taking the necessary defensive actions to protect our people and our friends and our interests. And if we needed to do more, we've talked about the movement of the Type 45 destroyer to the Eastern Mediterranean. If we need to do more capability-wise, then of course we will.
On a final point, a slightly lighter note, although in some respects maybe not that lighter. I know you're not my MP, but could you take the trouble, please, as a Foreign Office Minister, to write to the petrol stations in my area and say, stop putting up your prices, you're still using the same petrol that you owned 3 weeks ago?
Well, as
it'd be great. I mean, if it came from a Foreign Office Minister, they might go, wow. The boys and girls at BP and Shell might be going, oh, it's come from Hamish.
Ian, I would love to, but unfortunately I'm not your MP, and I deal with these questions in and around Lincoln on a regular basis, so I would love to...
You're telling me to ask Laura Trott, aren't you?
You ask Laura Trott and I'll look after Lincoln.
Fantastic. Minister, good to see you, sir. Thank
Good to
you.
see you.
Hamish Falconer, MP, Foreign Office Minister, with us here on Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Sarah says, Ian, could you ask your guest Hamish, we didn't get a chance, I didn't see that until the Foreign Office Minister had gone. Could you ask Hamish if the reason Starmer has dithered with his decision on whether to join the war or even assist the US is because we're overrun with unknown individuals and the UK is now at risk of upsetting sleeper cells? There's a really good point on that. We've got Leo and Matthew back in with us in the studio. On that point, Leo, we did discuss this before you had to leg it to make way for the minister.
Yeah,
We were talking about, you know, the kind of people that are in our society. I made a point in the week that if you take channel crossings, for example, I get all the stats. It's it's not the biggest part of immigration, but it's significant, and the optics are horrific for the Home Office, whether it's Tories, Labour, or whoever. You might have thought, bearing in mind that Iranian boat contingents help make up 70% of those crossings, so it's a significant amount of Iranians on those crossings. You might have thought in the last week that the Channel would be in special measures. They would say, right, OK, at the moment we have a situation where there isn't really much of a processing takes place, the system's overrun. Not blaming any individual here at this point. But given what's happened in Iran, that's the point where we go, right, every single person on that boat, I'm sorry, we're going to have to detain you. There's no way we can. We don't know who you are on a good day. On a bad day, this becomes particularly problematic. Leo.
Well, yeah, the channel crossings are a mess. Have always been a mess, and you know, multiple governments have failed to deal with it, and we need a new way of looking at it. I think we do have to look at leaving the European Convention of Human Rights. It's the only way to do this again, and I think we should start.
I'm surprised. Very proud.
We should start.
We had a good chat outside.
Yeah, is that what happened?
Reforms now.
Yes.
No, that's right.
And I think there's no better.
I'm with Nigel on your back.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything particularly right wing about leaving the European Convention of Human Rights. I would leave anything that doesn't work. This frankly doesn't work. And who would I want to redraft a UK Convention of Human Rights? Well, it would be Sir Keir Starmer. So actually, if I was a smart Labour government, which we don't have, I would be strategically looking at that and say, yeah, let's do this.
Who runs a smart, just out of interest, who is the person that would run a smart Labour government?
Well, I think Sue Gray, but she didn't do too well in the first 100 days.
Sue Gray had to leg it for the other place.
No-brainer, Rainer?
I think is that what you're looking for? More left or more right?
Oh, I think I should be up there now.
Oh my God!
I think Sir Andy Burnham, I think would be a great shout. Anyone from the soft left.
Is he Sir?
I mean, Wes Street.
He
is in my life.
You said Sir Andy Burnham. Has he been knighted?
I was saying Sir Tony Blair since 2001, so don't you worry about it. I'm well ahead of the curve. I think Wes Streeting would be another absolutely fantastic option. Yeah. I'd love to see Sir Keir Starmer as you know, in the Foreign Office, Wes Streeting, or Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, and a leadership of the great and the good in the Labour Party. That's what I want to see for the strongest possible country, for the strongest party that we can have.
Matthew, just back to that point.
Coming
about
back
channel,
to the point about
channel
the post,
sorry. I mean, it does. No, it was a great riff.
You've given me a vision of maybe where the Labour Party should go, but it's not going to happen, sadly.
I was just thinking of the number of debates we'd get out of that very scenario that you just cited there.
Coming back to the boats,
yes.
The problem is we have no idea who these people are who are coming over in the small boats. It is an incredibly visual image. It is an invasion of people that we have no idea who they are. But the big point is that when the fall of Afghanistan happened, the Taliban sent people to act as refugees and come across in the small boats. We know this because we caught them. When the Ukrainian war happened and Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia sent spies as refugees to the UK via the small boats. We know that because they were caught whilst they were already here in Britain. I would not be surprised if Iran will do exactly the same thing. If not, they've already been doing it. So the issue is, and this is not a party political thing, the small boats crisis is a crisis. People should not be being put up in hotels without checks or anything like that. People should be absolutely vetted to the hilter. And frankly, we have no idea who these people who are coming here. They could be terrorists.
I mean, it seems extraordinary that whenever anything like this happens with Iran, security is upped and the terror threat is invariably increased. And, you know, you'll see more of those cops with machine guns on railway stations as well as airports. And you might get an extra look when you put your... That's true enough. You might get an extra look when you're at passport control coming back from your Beano in Malaga, Leo. All of that. So that kind of stuff happens, and yet the Channel, I've not heard anyone go, right, this week, you know, the minister in charge of the Channel, which one would assume is the Home Secretary ultimately, along with, you know, various other elements. Do you think there'd be a big speech on this? From this week, anyone on those boats, I'm sorry, you're detained. We literally have a war of which we are part of.
I mean, I think you've described the multiple wars that we've been part of under the previous administration and under this as well, and we haven't done that. I think the whole channel crossing thing is a bin fire, and we need to sort out. I don't believe in just detaining people This isn't the United States when they detained every Japanese person in the Second World War in concentration camps. I don't think that's where this country wants to go or should be going. So, but I do think we absolutely need to resolve the bin fire that is Channel Crossing.
Would you describe what the Americans did when Trump came in of stopping the illegal immigration at the southern border, where they detained people, put them into processing centres, and if you were here illegally, put you on the back of a cargo plane and flew you out? Would you describe that as the Japanese concentration camps after the Second World War? Because I would describe that as a tough immigration policy and what the British public are desperate for. We're desperate for people on these boats to not be, as soon as the boot lands on the beach, they shouldn't be put into a bus and carted off to the nearest travel lodge. Other hotels are available. They should be taken to a processing centre, be processed. You don't have documents with you. You dump them in the channel. Well, sorry, automatic refusal. In COVID, we put Nightingale hospitals up within weeks. Never needed to use them, but they were there. Why can't we put up, I don't know, Nightingale immigration facilities?
Because there's no legal way to get into this country. There's no legal process.
There is. It's called buying a ticket on a flight and flying over here with your passport and your visa.
That's not how you come over to the country.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. It is possible. You can get a Wizz Air. One of the biggest.
There is no legal way to do this.
One of the worst things that we had was Eastern Europeans coming to this country through the small boats crisis. That was last year, right? You can get a Wizz Air flight, I think, for £24 to come to this country. There is no excuse for illegal immigration. But the point is, you've come here legally. We know who you are. No. I'm talking.
And you get enthusiastic doesn't mean you're right.
No, I'm talking what the British public are fed up of. They're fed up of people like yourself coming on shows and telling everyone, no, you're wrong, because we need to be welcoming everybody in, or we need to be supporting the Iranian despotic regime.
Is that what I've said?
No.
At any stage?
We are fed up of people coming to this country illegally and breaking our borders and having no idea who they are.
All right, guys, let's get a little moment here to get some more political opinion. We're going to speak to the Shadow Home Secretary. Chris Philp joins us from College Green. Chris, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, there's an awful lot of areas of these current Iranian strikes that have naturally informed our agenda here this morning. But a word, if you would, Chris, on this ongoing, what seems dismantling of our good relationship with the United States. Donald Trump overnight posting yet again, the Brits have let us down. We don't need their assistance anymore. They've joined a war that's already been won, he said.
Well, I'm afraid to say that Keir Starmer and the Labour government have undermined the special relationship with the USA. It's a really important relationship for trade, for commerce, and of course for defence and security, because Europe relies to some extent on America's protective umbrella. And Keir Starmer has now undermined that. He undermined it firstly by refusing to allow the Americans to use our bases, RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia, when the Americans wanted to land and take off their planes. I think that was a very foolish thing to do. And then secondly, Keir Starmer and the Labour government didn't put into place British warships that could have assisted with protecting Cyprus and protecting the Gulf states, countries like Kuwait, Oman, Qatar and the UAE against Iranian attack. And that was a dereliction of duty by Labour, because they knew 3 weeks ago, at least 3 weeks ago, that this conflict was coming. They knew because America requested use of our bases, so they knew it was happening. And what they should have done is move those warships into theatre 3 weeks ago. But as it happens, they're still alongside in Portsmouth, waiting to depart. So on two fronts there, I'm afraid the Labour government have undermined the special relationship and let down our allies in the Gulf.
Has it irredeemably ruined the relationship? I mean, Mr. Trump does say quite a lot of stuff. He has a row with somebody. He gave, Zelensky a bit of a pasting in the Oval Office, and 10 minutes later they're breaking bread together. So things can change. I mean, can the Labour government somehow rebuild what appears to be a very disgruntled American president? He's not letting this go, and it still seems that his angst is based on that very first day when Starmer turned him down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sceptical that this weak Labour government will turn things round, because Keir Starmer and the government is more interested in, Lord Hermer's he's the Attorney General, very wide-ranging interpretation of human rights than in standing up for British national interests or standing up for our allies. That's why they're doing ridiculous things like giving away the Chagos Islands. In fact, not only giving them away, but paying £35 billion of our money in order to do that, which ironically the Mauritius government are going to use to pay for a tax cut in Mauritius. That's the only tax cut Keir Starmer has ever funded in his entire life. So long as they keep doing weak things like that, so long as they fail to stand up to China, you know, they gave China that super embassy and they haven't put China on the top tier of the monitoring system. You know, they're weak on China. They've been weak on Iran as well. So long as this Labour government keep being weak in the face of our adversaries, it's not going to be very good for the special relationship. It's also not good for British national security or British national interests either, that they're more interested in Lord Hermer's views on human rights and international law than they are in standing up for British interests. By the way, the same goes for our border security. You know, we need to come out of the ECHR so that we can deport foreign criminals and so we can deport illegal immigrants, but the Labour government is too weak to do that as well.
As the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris, have you been able, or will you be able, to put what I think is an unarguable point to the Home Secretary about the current surely elevated threat of Channel migration, given what has happened, given that there are always a percentage of men on those boats that have come from Iran. Airports are on heightened alert when it comes to security. Railway stations, everywhere we're told, be careful, there is a war on. And yet, each day we still have, particularly when the weather's good, hundreds of men coming over on a weekly basis on the English Channel. Right now, you might think there'd be a very specific focus on that story.
Well, there should be. I mean, last year, 41,000 people crossed the Channel illegally. Most of them were young men. Of course, none were fleeing war because France is a safe country. There's no war going on in France. And the Labour government's approach and Shabana Mahmood's approach is far too weak. They're just letting them in. They're putting them up in hotels, costing £4 billion a year. Now, what we should be doing is coming out of the ECHR, and that would, the European Convention on Human Rights, and that would allow us to deport these illegal immigrants within a week of arrival, either back to their country of origin, if that's possible, or to a safe third country like Rwanda, if it is not possible. And pretty quickly, if we did that, the illegal immigrants would stop crossing the Channel, because why would you bother crossing the Channel if you're quickly going to get removed?
Indeed, but right now there is clearly an increased threat. There has to be, by any measure, an increased threat. Can you put a question, perhaps in Parliament, written or otherwise, Chris, to the Home Secretary on this basis, that surely anyone crossing the Channel since last Saturday, ideally, but we can't do anything about those that have already been put into hotels, but anyone crossing the Channel now, during the backdrop of a war with Iran, has to be detained?
Well, I think Channel migrants who cross the Channel illegally should be detained anyway, whether from Iran or from anywhere else, detained and deported. But yes, I will be putting that point to the Home Secretary at the next opportunity in Parliament, because there is a risk that this Iranian situation triggers even more illegal immigration. And of course, what some people will do is they will pretend to come from Iran, even though they don't. We saw that in the past, where people went into, for example, Germany in 2015, pretending to be Syrian when in fact they weren't. So we need to be alive to that as well.
Just a quick word, Chris Philp, on these protests we are seeing. We've seen campus protests where way too many universities, frankly, have allowed all sorts of mourning festivals to take place for the death of the leader of a medieval death cult in Iran, the Ayatollah. But we've seen it on our streets. I think on Wednesday we saw it in Manchester, nearly 1,000 people showing up. On Friday we saw it in Birmingham, death to the IDF, burning of Israeli flags, all manner of other unpleasant things muttered. It appears it gets a free pass. Your comments on that, please.
Well, it shouldn't. I mean, people should not be mourning the death of the Ayatollah, because he presided over a barbaric regime which in just the last few weeks alone has murdered 35,000 of its own citizens in cold blood. They've been oppressing women for years and years and years. It is a despicable regime. Nobody should be expressing support for it or for the Ayatollah as an individual, given he has just been murdering tens of thousands of his own citizens, and those events should not be allowed to go ahead, in my view.
Chris Philp, thank you for your time, sir. Have a great Sunday. Chris Philp, MP, Shadow Home Secretary, with us live on College Green. Matthew and Leo still with us. We're going to watch with interest this week then, Leo. Will that question be thrown, specific question on the channel, be thrown to the Home Secretary?
Well, I think, you know...
And why has it taken me to remind the Shadow Home Secretary that it might be a good idea?
Well done, Ian.
I was thinking the same thing.
PM.
It's always nice, it's always nice to be lectured by a complete failure. And, so hearing from Chris
Philp... I'm just doing my job.
I hate you, Ian. But hearing from Chris Philp and the Conservative Party on immigration and Labour's failure and putting them in hotels. You put them in hotels. Jenrick put them in hotels. The immigration minister, a failure. Bunch of failures, don't care.
He did. To be fair to Jeremy, he did quit over this very issue.
Correct.
But Matthew,
and the counter I would come back at is, yeah, absolutely, we messed up. And that's why we're not in government anymore. And we've learnt our lessons. And we're now saying the things that I was saying at the time we should have been saying. Yeah. We're saying the stuff that the British public want. We're saying the common sense solution to these problems. So you can blame the past as much as you want, but we're not in power anymore. You guys are. You have the big majority. Deal with it.
There has been a huge crackdown and a wave of which makes the Labour Party and party members extremely uncomfortable. So I think Labour is actually doing a tremendous amount. Look at Shabana Mahmood's announcement this week.
Tremendous amount. Second highest year for illegal immigrants. Across millions and billions more to the French, scrapping the Rwanda plan before a fight.
If only we had 14 years to sort that out.
Yeah, and we've learnt our lessons. That's why we're not in government, but we're at least coming up with the solutions now, whilst you guys are U-turning.
You're constantly talking about simple solutions that never worked in the first place.
This is what the public hate. They hate this blaming of the past.
Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, Leo Watson, thank you guys.
Cheers,
They're off for a croissant and a beer. This is Talk.
I'll have the croissant.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. Homer Common Sense. So much to get through. Ian Collins in for Alex Phillips right here on a Sunday morning. It's a lovely time to be on air, particularly when you've got an agenda that is rammed and crammed as the current one. Thanks to Donald Trump, Keir Starmer, and a bunch of nutters protesting in Birmingham. We've got a full switchboard and we'll be going to your calls. Some comments so far. This from Alistair, who says, well done to Hamish Falconer. He's the Foreign Office Minister. We had him with us a little while ago for turning up a very smooth communicator. The problem is that the non-availability of naval assets shows how utterly incompetent this government actually is. As with Mr Falconer, none of them have proper real-world experience outside political human rights classes, and we should not be surprised by their performance. I did notice that with the minister, it was... look, these guys, you know, they come with a brief. And clearly his brief this morning, and he's doing the whole media round, so you'll see him all over the place, is to talk about how wicked the Iranian regime is. And they're dropping bombs and they're awful and they're terrible. Because what was gradually emerging is that this was not a battle our own Prime Minister cared about very much. Now, I know if he was sitting here, he would say, well, that's nonsense. Of course I care about it. But that's certainly the line they appear to be taking this morning. But yeah, he answered some questions. Does it take us any further? He wouldn't be drawn on whether Ib Miliband lost his shizzle in a meeting last week. Richie says, morning Ian, the reason fuel stations are charging the new increased prices on old stock is to cover them for when the prices come back down and have to charge a lower price on old stock that was expensive. It's a very good point, actually, and a rather logical one that I have no argument for. This is Michael, who says, petrol prices, the government love the high prices as they gain more in tax, not only on fuel, but on the higher costs of everything. And Jess says, I think Ed Miliband delayed the sailing of the Dragon to be renamed the Rachel Thieves, and two, to be welded with solar panels and wind power. That's what it is. They're not waiting for some welding to take place. They're waiting for some windmills to go on top of it to get the thing there. And the solar panels, as Jess mentioned. 0344 499 1000. A lot to talk about, particularly that fallout with Donald Trump telling Keir Starmer that the United States doesn't need this once great ally, for Britain to send aircraft carriers to the Middle East. The US president said he will remember the lack of British support for this war with Iran in an intervention which risks cementing the collapse of our special relationship. Posting on Truth Social, he said, that's OK, Prime Minister Starmer, we don't need them any longer, but we'll remember we don't need people that join wars after we've already won. This is damning stuff and follows, of course, hot on the foot of his comments that, well, you're no Churchill, are you? Mr Trump, of course, made those remarks after it emerged the Royal Navy is preparing HMS Prince of Wales, one of its 2 aircraft carriers, for possible deployment to the Middle East within 5 days. Let's speak with Matthew Bryser, former White House official. Morning to you, Matthew. Nice to have you with us. I mean, this is a relationship that has, you know, when I was growing up, Thatcher and Reagan, there it was for all to see. I mean, you could not have got a pairing more solid. I know they did have moments behind the scenes, but broadly speaking, this was a real show of unity. That continued, of course, with Mr Blair, who managed to even cross parties with his relationship with Clinton and then with Bush. And now we have this mess. What is going on? Is Keir Starmer playing the game he should be playing? Is Donald Trump correct on his assessment that the war is won and we don't need the Brits any longer? What is happening? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks for the lively questions, and they're pertinent, and we should really be exploring them. I think what's happening is Donald Trump is being Donald Trump. He doesn't have a strategy. He doesn't have clearly articulated goals, and he flip-flops like crazy. And Keir Starmer's tried everything, right? So he tried to ingratiate himself with President Trump in that first meeting in the Oval Office when he brought out that special personal invitation to the only making the only president ever who had 2 state visits to the UK, had that amazing visit with all the pomp and circumstance, was very supportive of Keir Starmer, and now suddenly he's flipped. So Starmer now, I've always thought he should have been a little bit firmer and clearer with President Trump. What works with President Trump is when people stand up to him and then make clear that they are his friend. He can't just be his friend and he can't just stay up to him. So maybe Starmer will find his way. I don't know. But I think so the way Starmer has played it so far has not been good in as much as, first you say no to the U.S. using your airspace and air bases, and now you say, okay, we'll actually send our troops and our huge ship there. That's a flip-flop also, and I think that just shows how hard it is to deal with President Trump.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't dispute, this is a man that can change his mind quite a lot. I can't work out whether Putin is still on the Christmas card list over there at the White House or not. Zelensky almost got a smacking from both the president and the vice president not long ago. And then, a few weeks later, they're hugging again. So it is hard to keep up with Team Trump. I understand that. But, of course, Team Starmer isn't really faring much better over here, Matthew. We understand this unequivocal, we will not allow you to use our air bases. Less than 48 hours later, you can use our air bases. Clearly, there was some almighty rows going on behind the scenes in Downing Street. It's not a great look. And, of course, what's at the root of all of this is a very serious war. We don't need bickering behind the scenes. We need action and assertive action one way or the other.
I totally agree. And I grew up as a diplomat. I was a U.S. diplomat for 23 years. Yeah. And the number one most important relationship has always been the U.S.-UK. I mean, yes, we call it the special relationship, but it is. There's really nothing else like it. And to go back, I forgot to answer one of your questions. The war is nowhere near over. And who even knows, what does it mean for the war to end? Because the goals keep changing. First, President Trump said it's regime change. Then now Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, has been saying, no, we're not going for regime change. Now President Trump then goes back and says, well, we'll only accept unconditional surrender. So even if the active military phase ends, and it may soon because Iran is running out of ballistic missiles, as the FT was reporting this morning, or ballistic missile launchers, as President Trump's chief military advisors have apparently told him, the U.S. supplies of both offensive and defensive missiles are finite. And at some point, I think President Trump is going to realize this is really a liability on him politically and economically as the U.S. economy continues to slow. So I think he'll at some point just want to walk away. But that's not the end of it, because Israel will want to keep fighting. And even, if there is regime change, what comes next in Iran? And will there be a civil war? And what will the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps do in the future? If their preferred political leadership is not in power, then they'll fight guerrilla war forever. So it's nowhere near over.
And we know, of course, from the Gulf War, the all-important exit plan, which has haunted administrations over there and over here for decades now, particularly with Iraq and, Afghanistan, what happened there. That's going to be key, isn't it? It's going to be key to winning the hearts and minds of the American people as well as the Iranians and those in the wider region.
It is, Ian, and it doesn't exist, right? I mean, I was involved on the Turkey policy side in the diplomatic planning for the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and there were multiple plans, and there was like a 5,000-page set of documents by the State Department. The Pentagon ignored it; they had their own plan. This time, there is no plan. Trump just wants to, he thinks, as he said, I guess last Sunday, he said he hopes that the IRGC and the Iranian military will lay down their arms, give their arms to the Iranian people, the ones they had been slaughtering just a few weeks before, and then Iran will chart a new course, a new future. There's no plan. And the U.S. is really going to need the UK and all of its allies that it's alienating when the nightmare of the fighting is over and the nightmare of the post-war period begins.
Do you think, look, we know what's happened with Gaza. We can see what's happening with Iran. It wasn't long ago, of course, that President Trump sort of made I think there was a jokey video that was released as well, that there were going to be casinos and Trump Tower and all the rest of it. And I say this not necessarily as a criticism, but there's part of me that thinks actually Mr. Trump really believes that that's what this place could look like, that it would be, it may not have a casino, but it would certainly be the picture of modernity. And I wonder whether he's considering the same thing in Iran, and his thought process, and I don't say this as a pejorative, is actually rather simple. Whether it's right or wrong is another matter. But he just thinks, get rid of it, smash a few things up, rebuild it, and we have a whole new regime. Life's tickety-boo, we all move on.
Yep, he is a real estate developer at heart. He doesn't care about history, doesn't know about it, has no background in international security, and so he looks at Gaza as a real estate project. Yep, and what about the Gazans and the Palestinians who live there? Oh, well, we'll sort that out later. He said something really telling yesterday in that regard. Yesterday, he had this SHIELD summit for South America. So he had all the South American leaders gathered, and when he mentioned the president of Panama, he said, "Oh, that was a terrible real estate deal we did. You got back the Panama Canal that we built for $1." So that is his mindset. Don't worry about all those details. Build it; they will come. And if they don't, then and I go bankrupt, then I get bailed out.
Well, it's not going to be boring, that's one thing for sure, as we watch with interest. Matthew, great to have you with us. We'll let you get back to what looks like snow behind you there. So
thanks.
Keep warm. Matthew Bryser, former White House official, speaking to us live from the States. Thank you to him. Over to you. Peter is in Essex. Peter, what have you got for us? Good afternoon, or good morning to you.
Good morning. I'd just like to say, as I said to your researcher, the way Starmer has treated the Americans is absolutely deplorable. My father, I'm 87 years old now, but my father, he was with the 8th Army all through Italy and the North African campaign, and he was a dispatch rider, I say, and he was travelling on the road all the time, dispatches here, dispatches there. And if ever he had the chance to stay an American base, he would always choose that in preference to an English base. If ever he wanted fuel, he could go into an American base, they'd give it to him, no questions asked. With the English, it was where you're going, this, that, the other. He absolutely adored the Americans, and he would be turning in his grave now if he could see the way we've treated them. He absolutely adored them. And I think it's deplorable. I mean, let's face it, all Trump was asking for is for somebody to hold his coat while he has a bare-knuckle fight with the Iranians. And we didn't even have the courage to hold his coat for him while he did the business.
It is interesting. He wasn't, yes. I don't think for one second, Pete, that Mr. Trump thought, when he rang Starmer and said, oh, by the way, Keir, we need to use the air bases, assuming that's okay, because it always has been. I don't think he thought for one second he was going to get a no.
No. Why should he? Yeah. They backed us all through 2 world wars. Why should we turn them down for a minor war? It's crazy, absolutely crazy. If anybody is a backstabber, it's Starmer. He's the worst Prime Minister we have ever had, and this country will be much worse for it.
The fact that Starmer has now kind of changed his mind, Pete, does that make any difference? Is it too late for that? I mean, he's going, no, he's trying to play catch-up on, look, we're sending the aircraft carriers, we can send more, we've got some jets going over there, don't worry, we're behind you, we can assist, we're not going to be offensive, we're defensive, that's fine. Has he left it too late?
Of course he's left it too late. The thing is, if somebody is shaping up to punch you in the face, you don't wait until they punch you in the face and then say, oh, I don't like it. You punch them in the face first. I mean, this is not just about regime trains. This is about ballistic missiles and atomic warheads. And Iran wasn't far away from obtaining both. And then the West would have been in real trouble. You can't wait until they fire atomic missiles at you and then say, oh, we'll try and shoot them down like he's recommending. You need to stop them being launched in the first place. And this is what Trump has done.
All right.
He's stopped them launching them in the first place. And that's what needed to be done.
Peter,
this has been coming for years and years and years.
Arguably it has. I get you, Peter.
A blind person would see that wouldn't be able to see it.
I know what you're saying. Peter, thank you. Peter in Essex. Passionate stuff. Keir's left it too late. It was sort of just under, 48 hours. So it was this time last week where we'd originally heard that, Keir started, the government will not be allowing the use of our air bases for this. Some sort of legal advice from that Hermer character, one assumes. And then, of course, all change over there at number 10. Oh, no, actually, we will let you. by that stage, I just think Trump, whatever you think of him, I think he was absolutely spooked and apoplectic at the idea. You just said no? So we're now going to fly those jets, you know, halfway round the world again because we can't use the bases that we really needed to use in order to carry out this this offensive. 0344 499 1000. More thoughts on that. Is the UK-US relationship damaged for good? Your thoughts on those protests that took place on Friday in Birmingham and in Manchester last Wednesday and on various university campuses. All people mourning the death of a medieval terrorist who'd killed tens of thousands of his own people, and that's just this year. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go to your calls. 23 minutes after 11 o'clock. Carl's in Liverpool. What have you got for us, Carl, on that relationship? What are you thinking? Hi.
Hi. Good morning, Ian. You okay?
Yeah, good.
I was just saying earlier, I think the special relationship between Labour and America, Donald Trump more specifically, is done. But the relationship between us as people, Americans and British people, I don't think that'll ever be affected. I speak to some of the guys I've worked with, American soldiers in the past on a regular, and they've sent me messages saying, depending on where Keir goes with this, is depending on how far our special relationships does get damaged. But if we went to war tomorrow, actual war, boots on the ground, Ian, one, we haven't got the money to do so, we haven't got the manpower, but I still think he would hesitate, which would be even worse. You know, I don't think he understands that this position that Donald Trump's in, he needs all the support he can get, and because he's so late to the party, there's no point in him getting involved now.
I mean, it could be said, and I don't like using the term in Starmer's defence very often, Carl, but is it possible that when you think that, you know, Spain not involved at all, France are off the scale angered with Trump, Germany quite similarly, some might say, actually, when you think of Europe, we're still, like, doing much more than many other countries are.
Yeah, we are. Of course, we are. Obviously, you've got Spain, quite libertarian. France, same. You know, I just think because of our relationships in the past, that's why it's being magnified to such a huge thing. You know, and given that Donald Trump's so outspoken, and he has every right to say what he said, because, you know, this is the thing. I don't think he expected Keir Starmer to say no, and there lies the problem. I think, you know, when you're allies, if someone says, listen, I'm going to land this jet in your back garden, is that okay? Not a problem. I mean, they're only taken off. I think the longer it goes on, Keir Starmer needs to catch up with everything and think, well, is it worth sending them warships or whatever?
Yeah, I think, and I can almost hear a statement from Trump in a couple of weeks going, well, you know, I didn't like you a couple of weeks ago, Keir, but actually it turns out everything's all right. You know, he does flip-flop in that kind of respect. Listen, I've got to move, Carl, but you've been great. Thank you for that, Carl in Liverpool. Let's go to Khalid in Leicester. Morning to you.
Morning.
Hi.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Trump, Starmer, and all the Netanyahu, they should all meet up in one room.
Yeah.
Call it a jail. Throw away the key and keep them in forever. They are the cause of all the problems we have.
So you want the good guys jailed and the bad guys, what, like the terrorists?
They are the terrorists I'm talking about.
Oh, they're the terrorists. So
of course they are.
Not the Ayatollah, not the people standing on the streets of Birmingham shouting death to the IDF and Israel and burning flags and having previously served prison sentences for terrorism. Not those people.
When you say death to the IDF, the point is that IDF have committed murder and they've posted it online, Ian. The thing is, it's straightforward. I got the names of them. I mean, we know the names of the IDF soldiers that come back to the UK, having committed war crimes, posted them online.
Yeah, well, if you call a war crime, I mean, if you're responding to a terrorist attack on your country, I'm talking October 7th, then to respond to that, you can define it as a war crime. Some people will see it as a response to the worst terror attack that Israel has ever seen. Bring it up to date, though, Carly. Bring it up to date. Let's talk about how you began. Starmer, Trump. Starmer should be in jail. Why should Starmer be in jail?
They're all complicit in the same agenda. But this is carrying out the Yenon plan. You know, Ian, that Israel has got this plan to take out Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, parts of Saudi Arabia.
I've never heard anyone want to take out Jordan. Jordan's a very peaceful country that works, you know, right next door to Israel, works brilliantly.
Have you not checked what Israel wants? Have you not checked the plan Dalet and the Yenon plan? This is all documented.
No, I appreciate there is that view. I don't know whether anyone is seriously advancing the idea of removing Jordan.
So what do you think they are doing right now in even what's his name? Trump's campaign. It was bankrolled by a wife of Sheldon.
Well, we will always hear people talk about who's bankrolled. Let's talk about who's the bad guys and who's the good guys. Do you think the people of Iran deserve better than the Ayatollah that was previously the supreme leader?
course. I don't agree with Iran's policies and the way they're carrying out their massacre of innocents. Of course, it's horrific.
Do you also agree that Iran has been the greatest sponsor of terrorism on the planet when it comes to, I don't think, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, you name it, that they've been right up there?
Of course, I don't agree with Iran, but my point is, what happened? What about what's happening in Gaza? Don't you agree with the innocent civilians that have been killed and massacred, and their land been taken away? And it continues to do.
I think it's horrific that innocent civilian people have been killed. Of course, I do.
So under the same principle, we should be bombing Israel and America, the people.
Well, Israel, we're in a war, and I'm not going to defend a case that. We've seen the imagery, whether we're looking at imagery of October 7th, whether we're looking at imagery of kids who can't get a bit of food or don't even survive. No one is in isolation going to defend that. The overarching reasoning behind it, of course, is that it's a war. Terrible things happened from Frankfurt to Canterbury. Terrible things happened during the Second World War.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong there, because look,
you really did.
No, you're wrong, because Yoav Grant, remember what he said, we are dealing with human animals. We are cutting off food, water, fuel. This is our God-given land. And Mosfeq Glynn, one of the MPs there in Israel, he said Hamas is not our enemy. Our enemy are all the children and babies. When all the babies and children are dead, we will have achieved our goal.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been official Israeli state policy.
That's policy or not, this is their mindset. Don't you understand?
Well, if somebody had, I'm not disputing somebody said that. I'm sure somebody stood in Birmingham this week and said, kill all the Jews. I don't think you would suggest that represents Islam, do you?
Of course not, but the point is they are carrying words and actions. They're carrying out their words. They're actually committing what they are saying. They are committed to what they state. Don't you say their mindset? You can't be that blind. Come on, surely. When they state that, no,
I don't believe you. I believe you see it like that because you're looking it through that end of the telescope.
But it's not you and the telescope. It's very straightforward. Anybody can see what's been happening in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, and it continues to happen in Gaza. They stated the people in power. They stated there are no innocents in Gaza.
So Israel's nearest neighbour, if you want to call it that, they wouldn't say neighbours because that suggests someone has legitimate ownership of a land. But let's call it, for the sake of this conversation, is run by a terrorist organisation in Hamas. You don't think Israel might have something to say about that? Who wants, by the way, to destroy Israel? Its own words, to coin your phraseology.
The very inception of Israel was based on mass murder. You know that, don't you?
No.
And they were ethnically cleansed, of course. Where did all the Palestinians go? They were massacred.
Where do you where do you think Iran is going to go? Where do you think this story ends?
Well, what's going to happen is going to be when I say story ends. I think first of all the people who think they are mighty and might. They should repent, immediately, because listen, we all got to die one day.
We are going to die, but if you bring in if a new regime comes in and it becomes, as many Iranians are calling for, a secular country, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Jew, a Christian, anything you like, and you have that running, you have a more modern backdrop, you have a sense of democracy. It ain't perfect. You've got a Marks and Spencer's on the corner and a casino on the other side of the road. I'm being silly by saying that, but I'm just articulating the kind of modern dream that some have. Would that be a better place for the Middle East than what we currently have?
But by killing the same people you want to save. I mean, look, America's supposedly saying we want a regime change.
Well, if you're removing terrorists, that's no bad thing.
But they can't help them by killing them, can they? They're actually killing civilians. What about those schools where all the school children are killed? You can't save people by killing them. The point is, there should have been diplomacy to create this situation with the people. I mean, Trump's very close with Putin. Putin is close with Iran. So therefore, he should have spoken to Trump. They should have created a diplomatic solution rather than kill the people they're trying to save. And this double standard hypocrisy.
I'm not sure. Look, listen, you'll never get an argument from me, Khalid, on contradictions and hypocrisy of the geopolitical world, because it is full of them. Over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, they are all over the place. I hear you, but I politely disagree with you on your overarching assessment. Thank you. 0344. I just thought I was about to do some kind of bizarre rap on a Sunday morning. 0344 499 1000. Then it disappeared from my mind altogether. 87222 if you are messaging. We'll take some more calls. Don't go away, Laura and others. We're going to talk to Mike Neville as well, former Met Police detective, in just a moment too. Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes from Marge, who says, gentlemen, Starmer saying no, allowing the US to use the base is not strong. He panicked because he knew that we did not have the military might to assist. We've been rightfully supporting Ukraine with AMP and took our eye off the ball, reference our stock. He also loves to peek from behind the sofa. Is that Starmer? I think it might be. There was obviously a row that took place between Starmer and the Miliband contingent of the cabinet. And earlier we had the Foreign Office Minister in the studio with us. He was also in that meeting, but would not be drawn on whether or not Ed Miliband literally climbed up several walls of the room while screaming and shouting and going doolally. Wouldn't be drawn on that, funny enough. 0344 499 1000. Let's come to this story. Ian Huntley's daughter has told of her relief over the Sower monster's death and said we should flush his ashes down the toilet. I think most people would arguably concur with that. Samantha Bryan believes the double child killer does not deserve a funeral. He died yesterday, of course. This was 9 days after a brutal beating at Franklin Prison in County Durham, which crushed his skull and left him in a coma. Never did recover. Her mum, Kate Bryan, who's 45, also wants no resting place for her monster of an ex, who, of course, murdered 10-year-old schoolgirls Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman before leaving their bodies in a ditch. It was among the most horrific of child murders and crimes, as if there's any other kind. You take the point the country has seen. And, of course, we followed the story as you know, the country was looking for these kids. Huntley was a witness on TV news at the time as the local school caretaker, I think he was. Turned out that he was responsible for their deaths. He's now dead. Mike Neville joins us, former Met Police detective. Morning to you, Mike. I mean, these conversations, they're not pleasant conversations, but I guess they sort of happen all the time. You know, what do you do with the dead body of someone who's carried out the most horrendous crimes?
Well, in the past with these monsters, you know, especially after Nazi Germany, when people like Hess died, they cremated them and then threw their ashes in the sea, so there could be no sort of people going there to sort of celebrate these wicked lives. And again, with Huntley, I read in the papers that the prison service can spend up to £3,300 on a funeral for this monster. And I think most people will be absolutely outraged by that. I mean, I don't know how much funeral directors charge. I imagine it'd be a couple of £100 to burn him, put him in a pot and then fling him in the sea. And I think that would be the end that people would want. Too many people, sort of sick people, celebrate these serial killers, try and emulate them or whatever else, get obsessed with them. So let's have no marker, let's have nothing that would commemorate this evil life, because I think most of us will be thinking of the families at the moment of Holly and Jessica, because, of course, this wickedness just rakes up awful things for them, and that's the people we care about. Huntley, in my view, should have been hanged in 2003, and that would have been the end of him. But the idea that we're spending taxpayers' money on a funeral for this awful, wicked serial killer is a bad thing.
It is a look. No one is going to shed a tear for Ian Huntley, and no one's going to shed a tear for anyone guilty of those kind of murders, of course. And it's interesting that his own daughter has that view. That's a. I mean, when you were dealing with the bad guys, did you? I mean, you must. There's a point, I suppose, when you have a sort of a bizarre sympathy for those relatives around someone like this. I was thinking of Ian Huntley's mother, who I understand was at his deathbed, who probably looked across at her dying and battered, horrendous son, but no doubt, as any mother would do, simply saw a little 5-year-old boy as he was back in the day and wondered, what the hell happened to my son?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at it. I mean, you think, these people, it's just the impact that Huntley's evil deeds had on all these people, you know, and it's like his daughter, she can't help who her father is, you can't punish her, and she must live a dreadful life, you know, when people ask her who she is and where she's from. It's just absolutely awful, but let's be rid of this man, let's get those, I think she's probably right, a toilet is probably the best place for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, Mike, great to have you on. Mike Neville, he is, of course, former Met police detective. Thank you to him. I think, naturally, it's not a... I did have a friend whose father committed a pretty awful crime. I won't go into the details. And I remember the friend imparting to me that, you know, you heard about my dad. I never forget him saying this. And I hadn't seen the guy for a while. I say more of an associate, but I'd known him for a while, this guy. And I said, yeah, I had heard about your dad. I wasn't about to hold it against his son for what his dad had done. But I did think after we'd met, I thought, how does he move forward? How does he and his siblings move forward, knowing what their old man had been found guilty of? You would never... And he said to me, he said, you know, my dad was a hero. He said he wasn't... My dad, he said he held proper hero status to me when I was a kid. And I just thought, man, that is so devastating. Where do you go with that? Where do you go with that? The person that, this is not like a colleague that you respected all your life and you found out years later they were a wrong, and that's bad enough. You feel that breach of trust and all that. But your own dad, or your own mother, when you discover the very person that raised you, cuddled you, loved you, guided you, you know, took you through life, fed you, took you on trips, all of the, you know, the usual parental elements of life. I don't know how a child, and the many other relatives, of course, you know, the mother of, the father of, how they deal with that. Now, that's not where our instinctive sympathies go in these kind of cases, of course not. But it is another element of the story that you do scratch your head and wonder how you could ever kind of move forward after that. I think the short answer is you can't. I don't think you can. You just somehow find a way of living with that for the rest of your life. 0344 499 1000. But certainly, no, I don't think you'd have a funeral for Huntley, would you? You would literally flush his ashes down the lav. I think his daughter is bang on about that. 0344 499 1000. Oh, we did have a call there. So suddenly legged it on me. Goodness, what have I done to upset Rob in Hertfordshire, for goodness sake? Chris Philp, says Paul. Remove them within a week of arrival. Why is he waiting for 1 week, says Paul, in Baku? This is reference to Channel migrant crossings. I did put it to the Shadow Home Secretary that he should ask a question to the Home Secretary this week. Should have done it last week, by the way. Making a very simple point that surely, even by the ineptitude of this government and previous governments on dealing with channel crossings, surely now, as in for the last 7 days, that story has taken a whole new turn. There's always a contingent of Iranian young men on those boats. We're at war with Iran. I think it would be perfectly reasonable, not controversial at all, to suggest that maybe, that at least for now, I mean, you should be doing this stuff with the boats anyway, but look, by their standards, surely anyone coming over right now, you don't know who they are, you've got no names, you've got no papers, you've got no backstory, but you generally get to know which countries they're from. Everybody who's on a boat is going to be detained, literally detained. We can't take that risk. We've got heightened security all over the place because of Iran. We know there are people among us who are happy to go onto the streets and chant their angst against Trump and Starmer, Netanyahu, whoever. We know what side they're on. These people live among us, and we're inviting hundreds a week across the channel. Chris Philp said he will ask the Home Secretary that question. Let's hope he does. 0344 499 1000. Back to your calls coming next on Talk.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's talk to Andrew, who's in Nottingham on those Birmingham protests. Andrew, morning to you.
Hi, mate. You all right?
Yeah, good, thanks. What are you thinking?
It's all it is. It's about these protests, and it kind of winds you up that we had a British mum actually jailed for protesting online, agreed. But surely it's the same sort of thing when you've got people on TV burning flags and chanting death to people. Why is it always confusing that one can go to prison and yet another can't?
Well, and of course we had the big argument about the Tel Aviv Maccabi football match, didn't we? With Villa. This is the same region, same police force dealing with it, which was not the match wasn't cancelled, but the fans were told not to show up, and all sorts of horrible things were happening in the community, and signs were going up, essentially saying no Jews. I mean, I'm sure there were literally examples of that, but you take the point. And then we have this taking place on Friday, and nothing much seems to happen, Andrew.
No, it's just crazy that, like I say, the person put a tweet online, understood it was the wrong thing to do, but these people who's on the streets, on TV, know what they're doing, and I believe that they know that nothing's going to be done to them for obvious reasons. And to me, like I say, it's always gone down for years now. It's a two-tier society whereby one person can get imprisoned who's a mum who was protesting over something that was horrific, and yet you get these people still protesting about death to people in another country. Yeah. To me, it's the same sort of protest.
Yeah, it is. And we don't hear anything from our Prime Minister about it, Andrew, and I'm disturbed by that, because I do want to see, look, whether people, I'm going to sound like a broken record saying this, whether people love or hate Donald Trump, the bit that he's really good at is standing at a lectern and firing off a right royal rollicking to things that are wrong by any standard. And if that had been in America, he'd have been up there in the Oval Office saying, this isn't going to happen in our country. Anyone who's out there doing this, burning Israeli flags, shouting death to Jews, I'm sorry, you're going to be hoovered up, you're going to be taken away. And as for you lot on university campuses, also mourning the death of the Ayatollah, for God's sake, that university won't get any funding until you stop it. That kind of stuff. But we don't hear any of that. In fact, all we hear, and Kaz made this point as well, we did talk about it in the week, while all this is going on, you've got Keir Starmer turning up at a Ramadan event in the week, getting up close and personal with the Palestinian ambassador, who's rubbing Starmer's arm and talking to him like a child in his ear.
I totally agree with everything. Totally agree.
It's bonk. I mean, how have we ended up here? Andrew, thank you very much indeed for that. That's exact. I mean, the ambassador thing was just horrifically just awful to watch. It looked like the ambassador, had some kind of cosy control over Starmer. I don't think he did, by the way. But Starmer just did not. He just looked like, oh, hello, ambassador. How are you? Really? Get off me. Get out my ear hole, Andrew, thank you very much indeed for that. Great call. Laura is in Wiltshire. Laura, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Well, Ian, I'm just interested that people seem to be thinking that Starmer is appeasing the Muslim vote. I really don't. I think it's wider than that. I think he is appeasing the anti-Israel vote, which is what you've just been talking about. And the caller you had earlier, who was he was just bringing it all back to Gaza. It's not about that. There are good Muslims. And I actually grew up with quite a lot of Iranians who fled the Iranian regime, and I'm 60, who are really anti, and they're Muslim. They're anti the Iranian regime.
Sure.
This is not as simple as that. And I think that Starmer is just terrified of the hard left, who include these deluded white middle class families who are going out chanting for Palestine. He's terrified of the whole thing. And as I've said to you before, I try not to think about my mind maps too much and joining up all the dots, because then you put your tinfoil hat on.
But you go mad if you do that, don't you, Laura, too much?
Totally, because I think that he is just terrified of the left of this country.
Yeah.
He's terrified of what's just happened in Gorton and Denton, because he can see that part of his support moving away. But I don't think it's just Muslims. I think it's anti-Israel, and I think it's massively anti-Semitic, which just breaks my heart.
Yeah, mine too. Laura, thank you. You're right on joining the dots. Laura in Wiltshire. I mean, the point was made a little earlier, wasn't it? If you are when you look at the sort of geopolitical map and you try to find consistency, yes, of course, the West, as much as anyone else, does contradict itself. What is an enemy one day will be an ally another day. I mean, it's not quite as instant as that, but I get that. You are trying to put together, a fairly stable place where people's guiding light is a version of a faith that they converted into a kind of medieval, death culty, Sharia law-driven nonsense that, even most Muslims don't want to live under or around. So all the while you have that going on, stand by for jip and hassle, because there's going to be quite a lot of it, whether it happens in those countries or whether it happens in other countries like our own. I mean, how have we got a former terrorist standing as a councillor? Quite serious. Is that even allowed under... Do the Electoral Commission not step in and go, oh, hang on, let's have a little look at the list of, people who can't stand for election. Let's go down there. Molesters, sex offenders. Yeah, you can't stand for election. What else have we got? People who've been lobotomised, you can't stand for election. Nothing on terrorists, it turns out. So, yeah. You go nuts, boys. Doesn't matter what you've blown up or planned. Stand for election. Really? I'm struggling with that one. Roderick is in Sevenoaks. Roderick, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yes, just to step back from the very specific discussions that we've all been hearing over the past week or so, I wanted to ask if you could arrange for someone with a kind of global perspective to have a look at it from the point of view of Trump going back to when he was inaugurated. there seems to be a sense that he doesn't have a plan for whatever he's doing. But the president signed multiple executive orders on day one of his presidency.
The second presidency, you mean, or the first?
The second presidency. Yes. He would know as a second-term president, this is really only an effective period of 2 years, and he's in his second year now. Yeah. So he's in an incredible rush. And I think all the things he's setting in motion started on day one with all those executive orders and carried through to all the actions that we've seen, Venezuela and so on. Some things like Ukraine, I think he wants to keep up in the air until other things have fallen into place. But it's like he's one of these stage magicians with multiple plates on multiple, spinning on top of a stick.
Yes, it's a very good point. And I suppose...
I wish there was someone who could actually comment with authority on that perspective, because I haven't heard anyone talking about it at that level.
It's a very... and someone who can be objective about it rather than kind of partisan. It's a good... And they are quite hard to find, oddly, because invariably those speakers do gravitate ultimately to one position or the other, it seems. But they will be out. It's a very good point to get a longer view and an overview on that. What I find interesting, Roderick, on this this particular moment of Trump's administration with Iran, and it does get lost a little bit, because when we talk about Keir Starmer's position, a lot of people over here divide it between the sort of lily-livered left who are against it and Trump being a sort of right-wing hawk who's for it. But, of course, actually, if you look to the States, there's a lot of hardened Republicans who are absolutely fuming at what Trump is doing. None more so than J.D. Vance, his own vice president. You notice has sort of seems to have taken a leave of absence at the moment. He's not doing very much media these days, because this is not an area that I think he instinctively supports.
Yes, I think all of those are very accurate. I just think it all reacts to the Trump personality, which I, along with everyone else, can see is quite a difficult one to control. I just hoped that there would be a broader perspective, and there are an awful lot of things in motion at the moment, not just Iran, not just Gaza, not just Taiwan, not just, you could just list them out, Venezuela, Cuba. And these are all things that Trump has set in motion, along with what he's been doing domestically and with international trade, with tariffs, and so on. So I hope someone will be able to divine an overall...
an overarching picture. It's arguably going to be something we would look at in the week anyway, on our afternoon show. And I'm happy to try and specifically find that voice as well, because I think it is interesting. Roderick, thank you, sir, for that. Have a lovely weekend in beautiful Sevenoaks. Roderick calling us from Kent. He's right what he said about the midterms, because when they come hurling round the corner, there could be trouble. One of the reasons J.D. Vance will be grumpy, of course, is because he, in theory, assuming that the Democrats still can't get off their backsides and put a team together, J.D. Vance is going to be the next president of the United States. And if this all goes terribly wrong and those midterms show up to be horror stories for Trump, then, it is for the Democrats to lose come the next election. Strange as that sounds, sitting here right now. But when you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ron DeSantis, I'm talking about these hard right-wingers in the States who are against and opposed what is happening in Iran, based mostly on Trump's, no foreign wars. That was his thing. Paul is in Hartlepool. Paul, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Yeah, hi.
What we got at the moment, we've got a team that should be running the council, running the country, right? I mean, when we want arms for Ukraine and all the help that we can get, when the right man kicks the person basically in the backside, basically,
I think you might be right. I think Trump would be very good at working out what's the best day to collect the bins. And, Starmer, I think he'd be good at that. So stick him in. We need the A team, and we've got the kind of E team.
I mean, they're going to give people £40,000 to them to get them out the country, right?
Yeah.
Why don't they employ people £40,000 a year to to enhance the team to process them and get them out of the country?
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I know what they're doing. That's it. They're saying it costs more, which is fair enough. But I think for £40,000, you might get say about 40 or 50 people out of the country.
You'd think so. I mean, the fact that the government are selling that particular policy is a win because it would cost so much more to keep them in the country is such a perverse and delusional position to take. As if, it's a good idea. Look, it would cost us 153,000. It's only costing us 40,000. I don't dispute all the nonsense that goes with it, and I'm not suggesting that in our current climate is governments, you can't just chuck someone on a plane. They've got to go somewhere. But it's not a win, is it, to give somebody or a family 40,000 quid?
That's it. The boat's coming across the water, right?
Yeah.
In about 50 years' time, right, they'll look back in history and they'll say that was when the Trojan horse took over the UK.
Yeah. I mean, that will absolutely be up there. You're bang on. Paul, thank you very much indeed, mate. I've got to run because the news is literally upon us. Nigel says, great show. A lot of talk today about Trump's comments on RPM, except from RPM and government. Emergency meeting tomorrow by then to discuss, I reckon. Yeah, I mean, can Starmer turn it around? Apparently, by the way, and you might want to shine some light on this, YouGov polls and others suggest that most people are against us getting involved in this war anyway. Would that suggest to you that Starmer's right? Seriously, perish the thought. Our lines are open. Let's get the news now at midday here on Talk.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the terminal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 3 minutes after midday, right here at the home of Common Sense. So much to get through, so many comments coming in from you. Ash in Slough says, morning, Ian. We know that the human rights are a flexible notion chosen by the regime in power. In COVID, all of my human rights were abused with no lawyer speaking up for me. They write the interpretations as they go. That's a cracking point. I should have put specifically that to Leo, our kind of more left-wing guest right at the beginning of the show, who was sort of saying, well, you can't, human rights are human rights. They are applicable in different ways, in different contexts. And I think probably the word human rights is the wrong one. The one thing that's interesting about COVID, and we said this at the time, so when governments tell you, oh, we can't solve the channel migration problem, we can't kick out anti-Semites and former terrorists who are preaching on our streets literally at the moment in places like Birmingham, Manchester. I've seen it in London, of course, last year with the anti-Israel migrant. We can't kick those people out. After COVID showed us that governments can do anything they like, OK? It doesn't matter how big, because nothing could be greater than closing down a country for 2 years, pretty much, maybe slightly more, on and off. Everything from businesses to schools to pubs to hairdressers to roads to going out of your flipping house. They did that. That set the bar, OK? They set their own bar of anything is possible if you really want to do. You can close down literally your economy, and that is no... In years to come, that will sound like, oh, that's a bit of an exaggerated way to describe it, isn't it? Surely there's more context to it. No, that's what happened. And then there's the questions over the illness or the pandemic itself. However, it showed us that governments, if they need to act and they want to do something radical, they can do it. But they can't stop a rubber boat floating across the channel. Ain't that a bit weird? I think that's a bit weird. And as Ash said there, human rights... Human what? You can't go out your house, you can't go to work, you can't go for a drink, you can't get your hair cut. I spent the best part of 6 months looking like Tina Turner, for God's sake. Even Dave Artekop grew a head of hair. Extraordinary times. We didn't know what had gone on. Dave can't wait for the next pandemic. 0344 499 1000. I'm sure he's going to say something unsavoury in my ear. We'll talk to Reem Ibrahim in just a second. She's live in Washington, D.C. Let's get some voice notes. We've got a whole range of things here. This is from Kelvin.
Good morning, Ian. Great being in Britain, isn't it? You look at the state of the country. These people that voted for Labour and they're going to vote for the Green Party, they must love this crap that's happening in this country. We were out yesterday. Price of fuel, a litre of diesel, £1.65.5, going through the roof. Food prices going through the roof. Energy bills going through the roof. This is what these people are voting for. These people that are voting for it must be sitting there laughing and lapping it up. They must have money to burn, because we haven't. It's just ridiculous. And letting all these people come in the country from Iran, 21 attempted attacks so far in our country. And out comes the do-nothing policies. Great country, isn't it? Got a lot looking forward to. There's a lot more to come, folks. You voted them in. Enjoy it. Lap it up. Because I know you're loving it. Because otherwise, you wouldn't keep slagging reform off. Common sense. That's what we need. And reform is common sense. Bye.
Calvin, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to that issue of those protests. What have you got for us, Diane?
Good morning, Ian. Diane. Gammon, boomer, far right, whatever the new title is of the week. It appears to me the people mourning the Ayatollah, to quote a friend, want the penny and the bun. That is, happy to be here breaking rules, not there living and supporting the regime. And again, UK Parliament should not have any part in Gaza, Palestine and Islam, person or party. Thank you.
Diane, thank you very much indeed. And on the issue of are our aircraft carriers ready, here's one from Peter.
Morning, Ian. Pete from Lincolnshire. Surprised to hear you on the radio this morning. By the way, it's Sunday, not Monday. Great show as usual. Regarding the HMS Prince of Wales being made ready to go, everybody's thinking, oh, it's a bit too late. But knowing Starmer, he's going to go out there and start defending the Iranians from attack from the Allied troops. So I wouldn't be too surprised. Great show. Cheers.
Nice one. Thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. Yeah, it is a Sunday, and it's now afternoon, by the way. We are back on a normal slot tomorrow at 1 p.m. Let's move to that story of Donald Trump telling Keir Starmer that he does not need this once great ally of the United Kingdom to help with the Middle East. This is after, of course, that bit of a row took place between the two men. The US president said he will remember the lack of British support for this war with Iran in an intervention which risks cementing pretty much the collapse of that special relationship. This was on his Truth Social network. He said, "That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need your aircraft carriers any longer, but we will remember we don't need people that join wars after we've already won." Now, he might be a little premature on that last point, but the overarching issue here is the demise of that special relationship. Even Tony Blair pretty much said it was unthinkable that this would be the case. He said if America needs help, we should be there. Let's cross to Washington, D.C. Reem Ibrahim is with us, writer with Reason magazine, enjoying a new life over there on the East Coast and enjoying every bit of it, I think, Reem. Nice to have you with us as ever. Look, I mean, Trump does sort of seesaw a little bit on, you know, his friends and his enemies. I keep mentioning Zelensky and Putin, two such men who've been, you know, he's a great guy, he's a wonderful guy, it's a beautiful thing. And then, like, I hate him, get out of my Oval Office. So he can flip-flop a bit, but nonetheless, this is remarkable stuff, isn't it? And I think this is quite serious stuff. When an American president starts to write that about the United Kingdom and its leader, as he has, I think we're in pretty tricky times.
That is definitely the case, and thank you for having me on, Ian. I think what's interesting about the relationship at the moment is every single aspect of it is being broadcasted on Truth Social and on social media, which is great for us because we get to really see the intricacies of what Trump actually thinks. Now, part of the problem is, I think, the domestic situation in the US means that, you know, support for Iran and support for the war in Iran specifically, or at least Trump is not calling it a war, but support for what is a war in Iran is not particularly high amongst Americans. I mean, amongst the MAGA base it is, but amongst Americans as a whole, there are lots of people who are saying, hold on a minute, we voted for Trump because we didn't want any more foreign wars in the Middle East. And now Trump is then doing the exact same thing, spending American taxpayer dollars in the Middle East. Now, the situation has happened. It's very different to Iraq because Congress has not given permission for this war. So the domestic aspect of it, I think, is an interesting thing to point out. Now, with the relationship with the United Kingdom, that's where things have really broken down. I mean, I must say, it sounds as though lots of people in the administration just do not have respect for the British. Part of it is, look at how terrible the situation is. Look at, you know, the socialism that is ensuing in Britain. Look at how poor the country is. But also, crucially, it cannot defend itself. You know, the fact that the United Kingdom as a whole would not be able to defend itself if we went to war, I think is really, really insane. And this is just one sign of weakness. I mean, the fact that Starmer then said, hold on, we will send some ships over, we will send some fighter jets over, we will support Trump's efforts. And of course, rather prematurely, Trump said, well, we've already won, so we don't need your help. And I do think that that does indicate a bit of strain when it comes to the relationship. But again, I also do think that Trump is pretty fickle, and I don't think that this relationship is unmendable.
Yeah, I was going to say on that point, and we've raised it a couple of times on the show, Reem, it is worth saying that obviously Democrats are losing their mind over this war, but there are many Republicans who are very, very unhappy. I mean, we could point to the vice president in that respect. This isn't an area that he's comfortable with, but there are others. I'd imagine old Marjorie is probably discombobulated by now.
Well, indeed. There's also a couple of Republican senators I can name, people like Thomas Massey, who are, again, these are people that are supportive of a smaller government. They want the American taxpayer to get a good deal. And part of the reason why Trump won is lots of people voted for him. Part of the reason for it is because he said, we are the peace candidates. We are not going to be dragging America into more and more foreign wars. We are not going to be spending more and more American taxpayer money into the Middle East. And he said, I'm going to stop wars, not start wars.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happened in this situation. So I do think that that nuance is really important. You know, nobody is saying that they don't want regime change in Iran, right? Everybody would love freedom for the Iranian people. But the question of why this war has happened, why has Trump decided to drag the American people into yet another war where American lives are being lost? I think is another aspect of that. And the fact that Congress was not informed. I mean, when you're comparing it to Iraq, with the Iraq War, Congress was it was debated, right? In Congress, they debated it, whether or not this was the right decision, whether or not this was okay for American taxpayer money to be spent on this war. And whenever you think about what happened in Iraq, it was debated in Congress. There were two branches of government debating it. That's not what's happened here. This has completely been done by the executive, by the president. And that's why lots of people, many people that are in the Republican Party, are not happy about this. Yeah. And I do think that there is an interesting aspect of this where you've got foreign policy on the one hand, but also Trump is very aware of the fact that the midterm elections are at the end of this year, where the Republicans are almost certainly not going to do very well. So there is also all of that kind of domestic political sort of aspect of all of this. I think when it comes to the foreign policy side, Trump could be pretty fickle. I think the relationship with the United Kingdom can be mended, but it also depends on how long this war goes on for. Right? If it's another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months, who knows? So I think that all of these things are out to play here.
Indeed. And of course, as you rightly say, and we had a caller just before the news in the last hour, I think it was Roderick in Sevenoaks, who made the point that, you know, those midterms are coming, hence the reason why all of these big things are happening in this part of his time as president in the first year and a bit, 2 years. Get all the Venezuela
and I think
this out the way.
I think he's coming to terms with his own mortality as a president. I mean, I think that there is some aspect of the president now being aware of the fact that he only has a very short amount of time left as the president of the United States. And what do things look like after Trump leaves? What do you think, is J.D. Vance now going to be the Republican presidential nominee? What do things look like afterwards? How much can the president actually achieve after the midterms where they don't have control of Congress? There are lots of aspects to this domestically that I think are playing on the administration and exactly what Trump is thinking. So that those relationships matter.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, it does mean that whatever the slightly short to long-term aim is with Iran, Trump's got to get this clean, hasn't he? He's got to get this done reasonably quickly. Naturally, if you are carrying out a campaign like this, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes, but this can't go on for years.
No, it can't. And part of it is, again, American taxpayer money, enormous amounts of money, millions of dollars will be spent on this war. Yep. The longer it goes on, the more American lives will be lost. And whether or not this is a relationship between Trump and the administration and the Israeli state, whether or not the amount of money being spent is entirely being fallen on the American taxpayer is still entirely unclear. But this is not going to bode well domestically if the war goes on for far too long. And look, I mean, for all of our sake, for the entire world's sake, but also for the Iranian people's sake, nobody wants this war to go on that long.
No, indeed. Reem, great to have you on. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I know it's only just gone 8 o'clock over there in Washington, D.C. Have a lovely day. Reem Ibrahim with us here. She is, of course, a writer with Reason magazine, now based over there in Washington. Thank you to her. Back to your calls. Michael's in Hertfordshire. Michael, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Good as gold at this end. What's happening?
I just think it's so ridiculous. We have these marches and these university people mourning the death of a killer of 30,000 people, and yet there was no mourning for the 30,000 people in these universities. And I just find it absolutely ridiculous that we have to put up with it.
How is it even? I know, we're probably both older than 18, Michael. So we scratch our head at these things and we ask questions that are obvious. You don't always get an answer. But you'd think by anybody's standards, if you went and spoke to one of those protesters in a university, I'm not even talking about a Muslim protester. Some of these will be just middle-class white kids that, have somehow joined in this bizarre pro-Islamist frenzy. If you said to them, do you seriously think this Ayatollah fella is a good bloke? I mean, could they look you in the eye and say yes?
They don't understand. They're maybe educated people, but they've got no common sense.
No, it's a sort of form of madness, isn't it? Where you know, I know it happens in all parts of the political spectrum where people wed themselves to a side, almost like a football team, and it's immovable. And if you dare criticise either a leader or a party, it's as good as criticising someone's mum or dad. I mean, there is that. But in a case such as this, you'd think it's a little bit more clear-cut, wouldn't you? That it would kind of usurp confirmation bias, and anyone would go, yeah, that Ayatollah, he was an absolute horror story and killed lots of people, not just the 30,000 this year, but over the years, over time, and some say up to 1 million people the regime has killed inside the last 40 years.
It's madness. It's absolute madness. And a lot of these people don't believe in free speech. They believe in free speech for themselves. But if anybody says anything in opposition to them, they get violent. And this is another thing. I mean, a lot of these people from different countries that come here, they're not allowed to demonstrate in their own country.
No, you wouldn't get away with any of this. And we've got former terrorists now on our streets, burning Israeli flags, calling for the end of Israel and the death to Jews and the idea of goodness. I mean, it's miserable, it's unbelievable, and nothing is said about it, not locally in law enforcement, and certainly not from Number 10. That's when I want to see Keir Starmer getting angry, but I don't imagine Keir Starmer getting that angry about anything, to be honest.
Well, unfortunately, we have the wrong government in power.
At the wrong time.
I feel frightened for my children and my grandchildren. My life hasn't got that long to go, but my kids and my grandchildren haven't got a good world to look forward to. It's a shame because
I know, and you do worry about it. I think you've got another 50 years in you, Michael, by the way, just so.
Well, I'll keep phoning as long as I'm still here.
I'm glad to hear it. You have a lovely Sunday.
You take care and keep the good work up.
Thank you, mate. Michael in Hertfordshire. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. More to come in a couple of moments. Great comments, great calls, messages coming in from you. 20 past 12. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. 0344 499 1000. We've got an awful lot to get through here. Voice notes coming in aplenty as well on a range of issues, particularly those protests that were happening right up till Friday night. There'll be more of them, by the way, and they'll just get a free pass. Let's get a word on this from Steve. Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve from Manchester. Nice to hear you on the radio on Sunday. I'm normally listening to you during the week, but I'm out travelling again today, so here I am. I'm pretty disgusted at these protests that have been going on in Birmingham and Manchester, mourning the death of a tyrant like the Ayatollah. I mean, what is wrong with these people? I mean, really, what is wrong with these people? This man and his regime have butchered 35,000 of their own people in the last couple of months because they dared to have the audacity to say he was a bad person. What is wrong with them? They're absolute morons. And we've allowed it to happen. Universities and places like that have all been infiltrated by these left-wing idiots spouting this stupid rhetoric that they have. It's beyond a joke, mate. We're going down the toilet so fast, we're not even going to see the flush coming, mate. Anyway, nice to see you on Sundays. Great show. See you soon.
Steve, good man. Glad you're also out and about on a Sunday as well. Thank you for that. And back tomorrow as normal at 1 o'clock. Let's get a word on that relationship with Trump. Here's Rob. Morning, Rob.
Hello, Ian. It's Rob here in Starbridge, mate. Ian, can somebody just pick up on the fact, yeah, that one of the reasons, which nobody's talking about, why Britain did not want to help America and help Trump is because it's got Israel with it, mate. People don't understand. We've got an anti-Semitic government, yeah. So they cannot be seen to be showing Israel any help in any way. Why is this not coming through? Why are people not talking about it? Because they hate Israel. This government literally hates Israel, and I'm anti-Semitic, and that's why they're doing it. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Rob, I think you're probably bang on. And when you think about sort of the Jewish population of this country, which is tiny, by the way, and culturally provides complete parity with the culture of this country, and yet these people are happy to align themselves with a group of people who support a medieval death cult, are happy to spout anti-Semitic, pro-Islamist phrases and slogans. One a former terrorist, another a mate with Evanjem Chowdhury, I noticed today, calling for Sharia law. I mean, what's going on? It's not controversial. It's not weird. It doesn't make you a racist of a government or a mad Islamophobe if you say, look, this particular group of people, they happen to be just Islamic fundamentalists, those on the streets. That lot, I'm sorry, you're not welcome to take part on street protests. And I'm afraid if you're in universities, we'll either close the flipping place down or we'll remove some kind of funding, because this is not okay. This is not all right. Why are we bowing to this bizarre medieval contingent of half-wits? But dangerous half-wits as well. Back to your calls. Nick is down in London. What are you thinking, Nick, on this related point? Afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian. What are you doing on the wireless?
I don't know. I just came in to say hello to somebody, and somebody threw me in a studio, and I started talking, and then, that's what happened. It's bizarre.
Pleasure hearing you. What it is you were saying earlier about white and middle class people, students protesting.
Yes.
About the Iranian leader being killed and why. I think it's deeper than wedding to a side. I think they hate Trump so much that anything Trump does, they'll protest against. Yeah. I sometimes think it's not entirely a joke, but if Trump cured cancer tomorrow, they'd still be out on the streets.
Correct.
Protesting.
Correct.
It's that blind and that blinkered.
Yeah. We all have a little bit of confirmation bias, when we look at the people that we like and the people we don't like. But, you have to sort of apply a little bit of intellectual rigour on these things, Nick, don't you? And you know, call things for what they are and see things for what they are. You know, I know it when I talk about Donald Trump. I'm not a massive supporter of Donald Trump. I think he's got some qualities that the rest of the world leaders could learn from, and telling it like it is, I know he sometimes gets it a bit wrong, but telling it like it is one of them. I'd love to hear Starmer get that animated, you know, just to get annoyed about stuff.
Agreed. I mean, I always think it's worth, whenever speaking with someone and someone doesn't like, I don't know, pick on a couple of figures, Blair and Thatcher, both in power for a considerable time, both, you know, polarizing leaders, but pick something that they did well or badly. They're not all bad, they're not all good. They're not, you know, Hitler, for example. They were democratically appointed leaders, and they governed according to...
Well, indeed, but the people who hate those, what tends to happen is people, you know, they don't just politely say, well, I disagreed with that particular policy. They lose their mind over it. And that's the bit I find just a little bit bizarre, thinking, man alive, you know, it was only Thatcher. I mean, she was hardly Fidel Castro.
Well, I love the bit on that, and the thing about Thatcher, her state funeral, there were people coming down to London for the day to turn their backs as the cortege went.
I know, how bored have you got to be? I mean, it's such a bizarre... It doesn't even stand... If you listed the things that Thatcher did, that most ordinary, decent people would go, yeah, that's fair game, that's fair point. You might not agree with anything. I mean, the miners' strike would be an obvious one that is contentious. You know, I know, again, that divides the room. A lot of people, probably someone like me, I was a bit too young at the time to fully digest it, but I was massively aware of it. I was a teenager, for goodness sake. So, but, you know, you can agree with the sentiment but disagree with the method, which I think is where it kind of went a bit awry there. But you're right, people who've got the time to go, I'm going to attend the funeral of someone's mum, and I'm going to turn me back on I'm coming all the way from Dunfermline down to Westminster to do me back the coffin protest.
I mean, it's just bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Yes, I mean, you know, I was 21 to 22 during the miners' strike, living in southern England, you know, in London, and soft southern London. The miners' strike in my daily life didn't affect me at all, and I could see that there were things that needed doing, because the previous miners' strike and during the Labour government, the unions were overpowered.
Well, you had the unions overpowering. I mean, obviously the miners' strike was the glaring example of it, but they're overpowering everywhere. I mean, literally bringing industry to its knees. And these were not cosy, friendly, working class unions. I'm talking about the people running some of these outfits. If you look at it sort of in my world or media world, do you remember the print union strikes, Nick?
Yes, I do. I was a Times reader.
Right,
I remember the Times being not on sale for a year.
It was just extraordinary, you know, and you'd speak to some of these... You couldn't get a job in the print, as... You know, like you and I couldn't just apply for a job if you weren't someone's uncle's brother's sister. You know, it was a closed shop in that respect, and they had all manner of authoritarian rules and regulations about somebody else's business.
And I found that strange, and that needed doing. Now, similarly, there are other things Thatcher did which were wrong and needed, you know, turning around. No one is all good or all bad. So I just find it astonishing that these supposedly intelligent, educated people cannot just see a nuance in stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
And
no
that's
nuance. That's how it seems to work. Nick, thank you very much indeed for that. It's a great call, Nick, down in London. Apart from Starmer, who is all bad, of course, I think we can say that. I'd love to sort of objectively say, well, actually, I did do this that was quite... I can't think of it. The area I've sort of got my eye on in terms of where this government might get a house point could be in house building and planning. It might. Now, we've yet to find out whether they're going to build the squillion homes that they've promised. We know that planning issues largely get in the way. This was mostly Rayner's thing, wasn't it? Carol is in Cornwall. Carol, what have you got for us? Back to Iran and all that is connected to that story. Hi.
Hi. Well, I think Rob was right, and I think the previous caller was right, in that the hatred on the left, and especially in the government and and Starmer, I think they do hate Israel with a vengeance, and also and Trump. Yeah. So I think that is really more or less for sure. I've been shocked absolutely to know that in my country there are so many people who hate Israel and hate the Jews. It's a very, very...
Well, I think a lot of us are thinking, that phrase, I never thought I would see this. There's a bit of that.
That's right. I mean, I just didn't know. I had no understanding that there were people who thought like that in my country, because I don't know anyone who thinks like that.
Well, that's a good point.
Well, now what I really phoned up about was Reem. Reem was talking about nobody in the USA understands why Trump has gone to war when he promised that he wouldn't. And from what I can gather, and of course, who am I? I live in Cornwall, what do I know? From what I can gather, Iran made it quite clear at the latest talks that they were very near to perfecting their nuclear bomb. Now, that bomb could hit and would wipe out Israel. Of course it would. I wonder where the law would stand on that one. But it would wipe out Israel, and he was concerned, as I understand it, that this bomb could obviously wipe out millions of Americans, and there could be a nuclear war, which would, of course, devastate the whole planet. So that is my understanding of why he's done this. It's not in his. It's not to his benefit, is it? He's got the midterms coming up.
Yep.
And so he's got that. He's also made that promise, which he has now broken. So it's not going to be good for him, but he has still done it. And I can't understand why she was saying that the American people don't understand that. It's sad they've lost 6 souls, but they would lose more than that if Iran was entitled to a bomb and used it. And we know they would, because they're insane.
Well, there's no argument on that assessment. Listen, Carol, great stuff. Thank you, Carol, who is informed down there in Cornwall. 0344 499 1000. Lots more still to come. We are going to continue to talk about what is happening with those protesters as well. Friday in Birmingham, last Wednesday in Manchester, all of last year in London. Goodness me, the list goes on. Details to come. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is talk. Peter says, morning, Ian. I think if nothing else, it shows that these universities are not doing their job if these idiots don't know the history of Iran. Well, that's a fair point as well. Protesters, of course, in support of the Iranian regime and its late supreme leader, torched an Israeli flag, chanted death to Jews, death to the IDF at a vigil in Birmingham on Friday. This, of course, replicated what happened in Manchester. On Wednesday, dozens of activists were out there in the city to condemn the US-Israeli strikes on the country and mourn the passing of the former Ayatollah. Seriously. Let's have a look and a listen to this footage from a small crowd who were chanting death to the IDF and bombed Tel Aviv, as well as burning the Israeli flag and, of course, holding up pictures of the former leader. Yeah, that was just a little taster of what went on. West Midlands Police told the Daily Mail that they had launched an investigation into possible racially or religiously aggravated public order offences. Yeah, we had a former terrorist there as well. He wants to be a counsellor. Welcome to the UK 2026. Jonathan Sachadochi is with us, journalist and broadcaster. Jonathan, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, these are those stories that, we've seen enough of them to no longer be surprised, I suppose. Nonetheless, each time I see an example such as this, and certainly some of the people that were, I just mentioned one former terrorist who pitched up to have a little chant as well, I still scratch my head and think, what the hell has happened to this country?
Yeah, you and me both. But let's not pretend it's strange. I mean, we did have the Prime Minister not that long ago and other members of the cabinet welcoming on Twitter. They were delighted, they said, that Alaa Abdel Fattah was coming to the UK, that Egyptian guy who'd been imprisoned in Egypt and then expressed over the years extremely anti-Semitic, anti-British, all sorts of horrific views online, welcomed here as a British citizen, given citizenship by the previous Tory government, and then invited here as a person who was welcome to the country, they were delighted to have here. So I think, in all honesty, this isn't a surprise. And when we see crowds like this, it's the culmination of 2 years plus of this sort of thing. It's this kind of outrageous protesting, which isn't really about Israel at all in and of itself. It's about people choosing a side in the battle that we're in today, which is the battle between civilization and barbarity. It just so happens that Israel is on the correct side of that battle. It's in favor of civilization, and that's why it's engaged in those wars, at the sharp end of things, on the front line of that war. But, Britain is, from top to bottom, whether it's the Prime Minister refusing even to justify or say he supports the US and Israeli action now in Iran, or whether it's these morons on the street, and really it's only a few dozen there, so let's not get too worried about them, but there is a problem setting in.
Yeah, and of course we've had it on campuses as well. I didn't know that. I know university is meant to be about free speech. We know that doesn't really work because it largely depends on what there's plenty of speakers out there who will say, well, I was cancelled, I wasn't able to make my point or give my lecture, whatever it was. But even by those standards, I mean, the idea that anyone is out there, even if you're neutral to what is happening with America, Israel, Iran, and that's fine, you can have that position, but the idea that you would sort of be pro the former Ayatollah is just, I mean, we can argue that it's an anti-intellectual position. That's there for all to see. But it's just bloody curious, isn't it?
Well, listen, I think it is an anti-civilization position. That's the point I'm making here. I don't think we should just dismiss it. These people are telling us very clearly, in their own words, exactly what they're in favour of. We should take them seriously. They should be arrested. They should be considered a high risk in terms of security of this country. If that is what they're saying, these are people with autonomy, they can make their own decisions, think their own thoughts, say their own things on the street, but then there should be consequences for that. And I will say that we've seen plenty of times examples of people from all sorts of backgrounds, communities, ideologies and politics coming out and saying these horrific things, whether it was those cars a few years ago that drove down to London and shouted over megaphones with the PLO flag on the bonnet, F the Jews, rape their daughters, rape their mothers, whether it's been the hate marches, as they were called, that paraded through London streets and others during most of the time that Israel was fighting in Gaza, with also chants saying Khyber Yahya, which is alluding to the slaughter of Jews in Muslim history. I think all of these things should just be accepted. There are people thinking this. There are people.
But nothing happens, though. That's the bit I can't work out. I mean, I always wrestle with that kind of, the right to free speech, the right to protest. I kind of marvel when if I walk past College Green and there's a protest. I don't even care if it's those oil people. They might be pesky, but I think what a great country we live in. You can protest, not just protest, but right outside Parliament. Fantastic, we can do that. People fought for this kind of right. But there is a point when you think, actually, this isn't a protest that's happening. When we look at Birmingham or Manchester earlier in the week, or the university campuses, this is something more. I think it's dangerous. I think it's disturbing. It's clearly anti-Semitic. You just mentioned those cars that were chanting horrendous things a couple of years ago. Nothing happens, Jonathan. Nothing happens. But I think
that's right.
I think if I were to stand up and say something, disparaging about certain parts of the Middle East, I might find myself in a pair of handcuffs within about half an hour.
I think that's true. That there is obviously a sort of double standard, or what is commonly called two-tier policing these days. But I think something should happen. Everyone has the freedom to say what they want and to express themselves and to protest. But if your protest stands up for violence and terrorism, if your protest is mourning the death of the person who was at the head of the country that was the biggest state sponsor of international terrorism for decades, if your protest is in favour of globalising the Intifada, which is undeniably a wave of terrorist attacks that killed many, many people over the years in Israel. If that's what your protest is in favour of, fine, go out and say it. But you should suffer the full weight of the law for doing so. And you don't. You're right. In this country, you don't. Even when the government did try to proscribe Palestine Action for supporting, for its acts that they said constituted a terrorist organisation, the courts knocked that down. And the protesters in court in their own case who had videoed themselves smashing a policewoman in the spine with a sledgehammer were let off. So I think there is definitely something a bit rotten in this country, and it's no wonder that many Jews are thinking very carefully about where they could go when it gets even worse. But it's the non-Jews who I think have a problem, because Brits shouldn't be wondering where we have to go, where we have to leave to escape to. Many of them ironically seem to have gone to Dubai.
Yes, indeed. And that, of course, has caused a whole other issue. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Jonathan Saccheducci, journalist and broadcaster, on that very point. Yeah, it's kind of interesting if you've gone to Dubai and you went there because you thought, well, this is a little safer, certainly away from some of the horrendous, nefarious chants on the streets. Then, of course, you've ended up in a very different place, bearing in mind there is obviously a bit of an alert going on over there in terms of what's happening with Iran. Chris is in Bournemouth on Iran. Chris, what have you got for us? Hi.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
This thing with Iran, and they think they can get it done in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think so, Ian. I really don't. I think this is going to drag on and drag on for ages. These people have got probably more sleeper cells all over the world than any other country in the world.
Sure.
And they're just waiting for the word to turn around and say, start the Intifada, and it's going to start. And you ain't going to be able to stop it in this country, because we haven't even got enough troops to fill Twickenham Stadium, Ian.
Well, indeed. I mean, yeah, we are genuinely in a fairly impotent position in terms of the military. I mean, we can offer a level of support, but as somebody pointed out last week, Chris, it's not going to be anything like, when the Falklands were invaded and we had to step in. We simply couldn't do that again.
No, but you've got a ship down in Portsmouth, Ian, that is waiting to get down to Cyprus, and yet you can't get it repaired because these people work 9 to 5. I mean, who is actually going to...
Sorry, I clock off at 5 o'clock. I can't fit your missile launchers, I'm afraid.
The enemy, that Ian.
Yeah, I hear you.
Who's going to say to the enemy, you can't attack us after 5 o'clock because the clock's gone and we got to clock off?
Yeah, Union said so. Chris, your phone line is slightly getting the better of us, but points made. Thank you very much indeed for that, Chris in Bournemouth. Paul says, Reform are in for a shock in May. All those people out on our streets supporting Iran are going to vote for the Green Party. It is frightening. Yeah, that's also a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, how much commonality is there between the Green Party policies and, in fact, it's not even radical Islam or Islamism. It's not even that. You could argue this about any faith, by the way. So whether you're a Christian, a Jew or a Muslim, how much commonality have you got with a political party's stance on, let's just take drugs and LGBTQ, RSTU, I think I've got them all in. What's the commonality there? But how many mosques will be going, get out there and vote for the Greens because they're great on gay rights and the trans stuff. Oh, and heroin. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get. There's a lot of silly people in this country. We live among them. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you. Coming next on Talk.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Betty says, good morning, Ian. Glorious Sunday in Scotland. It's the same people on all these left-wing woke marches, from Stop Oil to ISIS to unions to pro-LGBT+. They've got nothing else better to do and are the useful idiots of the causes. I think that's probably true. The problem is Blair made NGO and gave them the influence. Where do you think they all get the same signs and banners overnight? The same KGB paid-for socialist worker printing presses should see the community days the unions and the commies are running in the council estates in Scotland that have been transplanted. The Gaza students' crack is the greatest scam. Every organisation got at least one and turned an entire continent in 15 years, says Betts. Yeah. It's a good point. There's much more organisation behind a lot of this than some people like to concede. Greg is in Edinburgh. Greg, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. And yourself, you doing okay?
I'm good as gold at this end. Yeah, what's happening?
Well, I haven't heard mention yet across most of the sort of medium is the Five Eyes.
Yep.
And how concerning it is that we might get shut out of that as well.
As a result of this?
Well, if we can't be relied, if we've become unreliable militarily, which we clearly have, and what's to say that the particularly the Americans and the Israelis decide that we can't be trusted with intelligence either?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just reading there that in the last year, I think there were 20 Iranian-sponsored terrorist attacks on UK soil that were thwarted. 20. That's how serious and worrying this is. And if we're getting so much intelligence about actual domestic terrorist attacks,
that's a good point. Where do you think? You've just reminded me, because you mentioned the whole Five Eyes aspect of this, Greg. What about Canada? Where are they in this? Because I don't think, because they are part of that arrangement, of course, that intelligence arrangement. Mark Carney is not exactly a big fan of Donald Trump.
Nope. So they're putting themselves at risk as well. I mean. You may want to disagree with so much about what President Trump does, but I mean, it's absolutely crucial that we share intelligence with particularly America and particularly Israel. They're the ones on the ground. And if we become unreliable, particularly if they suspect that our intelligence services and are in any way infiltrated by the people that have infiltrated just about every other one of our institutions, are they going to share it with us? And it's really worrying to think that it's a possibility. I hope they don't. I hope they realise that the present government doesn't reflect the UK. But are they going to be a bit warier about sharing information with us?
Yeah, great point. Greg, you raise a great point. It hasn't come up that much, but you're absolutely bang on. Thank you. Greg in Edinburgh, great call. Where does that leave? I don't know what the Canadian position is on Iran, and perhaps that is my own fault for not bothering to check it out thus far. But there is bound to be something that I'm sure Mr. Carney has said that isn't particularly endorsing of Donald Trump. Again, Australia, New Zealand, where would they be in the Five Eyes world with reference to what's happening? Tony is in Doncaster. What have you got for us, Tony? Afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Hiya.
I rung a few days ago and I weren't going to ring, but I'll be honest with you, I'm getting really frustrated with a lot of people ringing in with a great respect because they seem to be siding on one side or the other. Why can't we in Britain just start concentrating on our country rather than other countries? And let me give a couple of examples.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump got back in 2 years ago, he effectively straight away went on the attack with the West and said, right, you're not paying enough for NATO. You can start paying 5% rather than 2.5%. And he kept doing the bullying tactics. There's a big ocean of water. We don't care about Russia. It's your problem. Number two, he then started threatening everybody with tariffs. And it weren't Canada, it was Mexico. If it wasn't that, it was Europe. And then we had a snivelling prime minister that had to creep round him and give him a second state visit just to keep him happy. And it seems to be with Donald Trump, if you don't do exactly as he says, he just throws the toys out the cot. And number three, and I made this point the other day, nobody seems to back me up on this one, right? I can't stand this regime in Iran, and it's a dangerous regime. But so is Saudi Arabia, so is North Korea, so is many countries in the Middle East that we don't tackle, because we won't tackle Saudi Arabia because we're buying oil off them. So we pick and choose who we take.
Yep.
And the last point on it was the other day we had a farcical situation where Donald Trump forgot the fact that we lost 457 servicemen in this country in Afghanistan that died. Forget the thousands that have injured. And he had the temerity to say that the only people that fought the front line were USA. And one last point on it that I keep getting shut down with, the last gentleman said, well, we should be sharing information with Israel. Israel is the same country that was supplying Argentina with surface-to-air missiles in the Falklands War in 1982. And nobody wants to check that fact, even though it's on the MOD website. In other words, I don't think we've got anybody on our side any longer.
I mean, I did say earlier, Tony, that to look for consistency on the geopolitical landscape is a fool's errand, right? Because you always find, countries that have dealt with one group and now suggest they are essentially the devil incarnate. You've got groups that were, are now firm terrorist organisations that you discover it was actually our army that trained them 30 years ago. There's all of this. Do you think we kind of maybe... I hear everything you've just said, but I mean, the last point about Israel supplying weapons to Argentina, I mean, I would assume, I've never heard that before, I would assume they were already supplying weapons to Argentina.
Well, if anybody wants to fact check it, it's on the independent website, the Guardian MOD, and the reason they were supplying them in 82 as intelligence information as well is because the Argentinian government at the time was pro-Jewish, and Israel took a disliking to us for attacking them. And can I remind everybody that the current Argentinian Prime Minister is Jewish, and he's been to Tel Aviv a few times over the last few weeks. So watch that one in the future as well. OK, keep my eyes open. I'll do a little bit of reading up on that specific point on the way back. Tony, thank you very much, and I will. Tony in Doncaster, thank you to him. And this one comes in from Hev, who says the vote for the Greens is because they are seen as useful idiots. It is well known with Labour that they're out of the running for any election, so the Greens are the next in line to be dominated. Look, I know reform kind of, you could sort of coin a phrase, sort of came out of nowhere. They didn't quite come out of nowhere. They've been sort of in variant forms for a while, and its leader, Nigel Farage, and others are, sort of seasoned politicians of many, many years. But the Green thing, that I'm going to keep saying this, that I don't get the Zach Polanski thing. I just don't. He's not an MP himself. I mean, the idea, people going, well, he's got a lot of